Hey, thanks for stopping by my channel. The purpose of this course is to take you from a complete beginner who doesn't even have a Kali Linux machine set up on your computer to someone who's able to successfully go out and find bugs on bug bounty programs, be able to read the hacktivity and other people's exploits and understand what is going on. So I see a lot of videos on YouTube and Twitter threads saying this is everything you need to study in order to become an ethical hacker. And I decided instead of just making a roadmap or some kind of Twitter thread, I'll just give you a video that is going to take you through the process of what I think everything you need to know in order to become a bug bounty hunter. You'll have a great foundation for recon. You'll be able to find the most common vulnerabilities. You'll be able to understand some of the more complex vulnerabilities and how to exploit them. And what I do in this course is not just tell you what you need to study, I actually walk you through the process of studying, learning, and understanding these exploits. So if there's anything specific you want to learn in the world of bug bounty hunting, you can look for the timestamp for that specific vulnerability, and you can go ahead and skip to that section of the course because you can always come back later. All right, before we get started and jump into this course, there is one thing that I want to mention. These courses and videos do take a long time for me to put out, and my YouTube channel is small enough that no one wants to sponsor me. So if you'd like to buy some hacker merch that looks kind of like this, or maybe a little bit of this, then you can go ahead and click the link in the description. Or if you would like to buy one of these courses, or if you would like to buy this course or another course or just a section of this course and be able to save your location and come back to it, you can check out the link in the description that is going to lead you to my website. And if none of that works out, that is totally fine. You can go ahead and enjoy this free course here on YouTube, and I hope that it is helpful and beneficial for you in your journey to become a cybersecurity professional. Now, let's go ahead and jump into it. All right, it did not take long for us to come to a crossroads where you get to decide what kind of virtual hosting software you would like to use. There is a free software called VirtualBox. You can download it here. You can download it for a Mac. You can download it for Windows. And I strongly recommend you avoid VirtualBox. I tried using VirtualBox when I first started, and this was quite a while ago, so maybe it is better now. But when I ran VirtualBox, I struggled for months because I did not want to pay any money to have a good virtual machine hosting software. But after it kept on lagging and freezing and I couldn't get HackTheBox to work, I decided I was done with VirtualBox and I was ready to pay money. If you want to avoid paying money and you want to try VirtualBox and maybe you'll have better luck than I did, you can go ahead and download it here and we'll walk through the steps to do that. Or you can run VMware. If you are running on Windows, you will download it here, and I'll have this linked in the course resources. You will download the VMware workstation, and you will run this as your virtual machine hosting software. VMware is my go-to. I still use VMware. You get 30 days free. So if you're struggling with VirtualBox, you can try VMware for free for 30 days. And you can run your Kali Linux machine on VMware and give it a test. I have never had any problems with VMware, and it has worked really well for me. So it is the one I recommend. So you can download it for Windows or you can download it for Mac. I am running a Mac and I run VMware Fusion because that's VMware's software for Macs. And so this is your decision. You can choose which one you would like and begin installing it in the next video. All right, if you have chosen VirtualBox as your virtual machine hosting software, may the force be with you and you have much better luck than I did. If you are on Windows, you will go ahead and download for the Windows. If you are on Mac, you will download for a Mac. I have already downloaded VirtualBox. It is really simple. You click download. You will extract the download, and then this is what you will be brought to, a VirtualBox manager. I have a really old machine that's actually deleted off my Mac now. You can see the last time I ran VirtualBox was in 2020. And I downloaded this virtual machine from Kali Linux, and so what you'll do is this will be listed in the course resources. However, you will come over here, you will go virtual machines. It will ask you, do you want to use VirtualBox or VMware? And you will choose VirtualBox for the sake of this video. It is quite a large download. I am not going to download it because I am running out of space on my Mac. But you will hit download. It will save to your downloads if you're on a Mac. I'm assuming it'll save to your downloads if you're on Windows as well. And then once it is finished downloading, you will open up your file that it is in. You will extract it because I think it downloads as a zip. And once you have done that and you are ready to open it, you will right click on the VirtualBox image that has finished downloading. You will right click on it and it'll say open with, and you will click open with VirtualBox, and it will bring you to this page. It might actually even try to open the machine and start it, and you can let it run and then shut it down. You'll want to shut it down because there's a few things you need to set up on it before you do within this settings tab. Okay, one thing I forgot to mention, when you launch your box or it automatically starts, you will need to click I copied it when you are prompted. It's going to ask you where the machine came from. I forget the other option. All I remember is you need to click I copied it. And if you save this machine on like an external hard drive or something, and your computer, either your Windows software or your Mac, whatever you're running, crashes, you can always grab your old virtual machine off that external hard drive, and when you put it back onto VirtualBox, it's going to ask you the same thing, and it'll ask you where the image came from, and you will select I copied it. So remember to select that. Also, you can, instead of right clicking and opening it, you can come in here and name your Linux box that you've just downloaded from Kali Linux. You can go to the place where your VirtualBox is stored and you can click on it, and then you can open it. I don't recommend that way because it is more challenging, and I remember struggling to get that to even work. It's easier just to open with, let the box start to open, either let it open all the way up, and your default credentials to log in is Kali is your username and Kali will be your password. However, shut it down once that's happened because it will begin to lag. If you don't, you'll need to come into your settings, and this will matter based on how much RAM space you have and how many CPUs. We will go over to our settings. We will want to adjust our RAM to as much as you can dedicate. I think I do somewhere around 8 to 10. I am really not sure how much I give it. I know that it's a lot, especially on VirtualBox. It's going to eat all the RAM you give it. It will also eat all your CPUs. I typically dedicate 4 to the machine. I think the one that I work on the most, I might even dedicate 8. I might even have more than that. I'm not really sure. But the more CPUs you can dedicate, especially to VirtualBox, the better, because it will use all of what you give it. And if you don't have a lot, that's okay. You just might not be able to run Hashcat, which we will get to way later in this course. I think it'll be somewhere around 8 hours into this course. You might struggle running Hashcat, but that's okay. You will be able to copy everything as I have ran it for us in the videos. And that is it for setting it up. You'll hit OK. I'm going to close out of it, and then you will launch the box. You can right click on it, and then you can go to start, and you will start the machine. You will log in, and I will see you on the inside. All right, if you have chosen VMware, this video and setup is for you. If you have chosen VMware, I think you have chosen wisely. So what you will do, I am running VMware Fusion, so I would come down here and I would download the VMware Fusion player. I have already downloaded it, so I am not going to do that again. Once it downloads, it will save into your downloads, and you will extract the zip if it is in a zip folder, and then you will drag it on a Mac, you'll drag it into your applications, and then you can launch your VMware Fusion software. If you are on Windows, I actually have a Windows box over here, which I have not downloaded VMware Fusion on, or VMware on, but I'm assuming it is going to be done just the same. You would come into VMware, you would come down to Windows, you will download it, you will extract it if it downloads into a zip, and you will then launch that, and you will have something that looks similar to this. and it'll look, here you go, it'll look like this, basically exactly what I have here. And then from here, we are going to put our virtual machine into our virtual hosting software. So we will go to Kali Linux. This is also linked in the course resources. We need a virtual machine, so we shall select that. If you chose VMware, you will download right here. It's 2.3 gig. I am fairly certain this is zipped, and you will need to unzip it. There's several different ways to unzip it, and you will have to go about unzipping it however you choose. Once it is unzipped, you can actually go into the downloads where it is saved, and you can just click on that unzipped image and you can just drag it over here and you can drop it, or you can right click and then select open with VMware Fusion. One thing to remember, when you open it, it's going to say, where did this image come from? And you're going to say, I copied it. It's important to click I copied it, or you will not be able to get the image to open. Now that we have the image on our box, we will want to adjust our settings. You can right click and go to settings. We will want to have our memory really high. I went ahead and just put as much RAM as I could dedicate towards it, and I have 5 processors, 5 cores dedicated to the machine as well. You will want to dedicate as much as you can spare. If you don't have a lot, that's okay. You won't be able to run Hashcat, as we will see later on. I have tried to run Hashcat with less cores and less RAM, and it will just error out and say that there is not enough space or memory dedicated to the machine, and that's fine if you don't have that. I will be able to show you all of the cracked passwords and hashes as we go through this course. But the more you have to dedicate to your machine, you will be able to faster crack passwords and hashes. But this will not be something that we encounter until at least 8 hours into the course. So you will likely forget about this, and you can just run it with however much space you have to dedicate. And with that, your default credentials, when you launch your box, you'll right click and you can resume, or it'll say start if it's in a powered off state. And your default credentials will be the username Kali and the password Kali. And with that, I will see you on the inside. In this video, we're going to talk about how to scan specific targets in bug bounty programs, as well as fuzzing our targets without getting ourselves into any trouble. I know there's a lot of interest in learning how to scan and fuzz bug bounty targets, because sometimes you'll be reading through a program's rules and it will specifically say that there is no scanning allowed. Now, there's a couple of ways to get around this, and if you watch my Shodan video, you can actually use Shodan to scan your bug bounty targets, and then you don't have to worry about anything because you're using Shodan, and that is one way to get around scanning a target and staying in the clear. Now, you can use Nmap and fuzzing tools to do this as well, and that's the purpose of this video. So we're going to go ahead and look at this, and I'm going to show you how to do this without getting yourself into any hot water and to be able to scan these targets without any issue. Before we get going too far, I want to explain to you why you're not allowed to scan these specific targets, and there's really 2 main reasons. One, the company doesn't want a bunch of bug bounty hunters using FUF, which is going to send several hundred requests per second to their server and have them get DOSed. And sometimes if you do this, you will actually get rate limited or even have your IP banned, which is why I always recommend using a VPN. But there is a way to go around this, and I'm going to show you that at the end of this video. And the second reason a lot of programs are going to tell you they don't want you scanning their network is people will use vulnerability scanners, and this is just really a big no-no. Don't use vulnerability scanners. Recently, a program went live, and then they were getting scanned so much with vulnerability scanners that they actually removed themselves from the bug bounty program. So don't use vulnerability scanners. These are the 2 big reasons why a lot of programs will say no scanning, and so just be aware of that. If you're going to fuzz for directories, make sure to slow down the amount of requests, which I'm going to show you how to do, and don't use vulnerability scanners. Now first, I want to show you how to use Nmap without getting yourself into any trouble. I've gone ahead and opened up Tenet from Hack the Box here. If you follow my channel at all, you will know this is my go-to box for web app education. And the first thing we are going to do is run an Nmap scan. So we have opened up our terminal here, and you're probably familiar by now with an Nmap scan. Now this is the typical Nmap scan that I like to run. I'm going to change the IP right here. So if you would like to jot this down, this is how I run an Nmap scan if I'm doing a capture the flag, but we are not doing a capture the flag. We're going to be scanning a bug bounty program, and it's going to look a little bit different. So we still want this -A, we will want a -F, and this is only going to scan the top 100 ports. The reason I'm telling you to use the -F is because if you're new, you're probably not going to know which ports you want to look at. So I have a list of ports that I use when I run an Nmap scan, because you don't want to scan all 65,535 ports. I think that's how many there are. You want to scan just a specific number of ports. A lot of networks are not going to want you going out and scanning their entire network, but it's okay to go out and scan the top 100 ports. They're probably not even going to notice, and I'll show you how to make it so that they're not going to notice and you're not going to cause any kind of intrusion, and they're not going to care. So we want to run the -F for our ports, and then you're going to want to run a -T and then a 1 or a 2. This is going to really slow down your network scan. I think that Nmap runs on a T3 automatically, and if I'm in a hurry and I just want some ports to shoot at, if I'm in a CTF, I'll run a T5. That's as fast as you can go. But if you run a T5 in a CTF, you can actually miss some ports. So if you're really nervous about running any kind of scan, you can go ahead and run a T1, and they're not going to notice that you're scanning their ports. This is going to really slow down your Nmap scan, and then this -V right here will tell you the open ports as it hits them. So this is going to run a really slow scan on the top 100 ports, and nobody's going to notice. So you can go ahead and run this, and it says that there are 2 ports, and it's going to pop down with the ports as it hits them. And so eventually you're going to see port 80 pop up, and I'm not really sure what other ports are open on this program, but this is how I would run an Nmap scan. And so you can see right here, it tells us that it's scanning the top 100 ports. All right, so I decided to go ahead and add in this Nmap network scanning legal issues page. So if you have any questions about using Nmap legally on your specific targets and you're still worried about it, you can come and read this right here, and it's going to give you a kind of the legalities of using on different networks. I am not a lawyer, so I decided to go ahead and add this disclaimer in there that you are using this at your own risk, and you should check with the laws in your specific state on port scanning. So this is how I would run an Nmap scan if I'm running one on a bug bounty program. This is going to be a really safe scan to run, and it's going to tell you the information that you want from these specific ports, which ports are open, what versions are running on your target. So you can go ahead and play around with Nmap. This is how I do it though, and now I want to show you how to fuzz for directories in a safe manner. And you may still end up getting rate limited, which is fine, especially if you have VPN. You can just switch your VPN. So we're going to go ahead and run fuff now, and this is the syntax for fuff. I'm going to show you this with this common word list right here, and then we'll go ahead and download SecList, and you can see a better word list than what is default on the Kali machine. We can actually see what we have as options here, and you will see that I'm using the FC to filter out specific codes that I don't want to see, and I think I had a 402 on here, a 403. I don't want to see the 403s, but you can leave those in if you want. And then you can filter with other ways, but we're looking for that -P, and it is right here, and it's going to tell you how to delay your requests, and you can slow them down by however much you want, from anywhere from 0.1 seconds to 2 seconds in between requests. Okay, so we have this request here, and let's say we really want to take our fuzzing really slow. You can run this with a 2-second delay or a 1-second delay in between requests. We don't really need to filter out by the not founds, and then we're going to run our word list, and we're going to run the common word list .txt. So if you want to, you can go ahead and run it just like this, and you will have this word list. So if we run this, you can actually see right here the progress. You can see the number of requests that are being sent, and so it's sending 37 requests every second, which is actually kind of a lot. One of the things about Fuff is it is really fast. We'll actually show you how fast this will run without slowing it down. And you can see right here, it's sending around 600 requests per second, and that is really fast. You're definitely going to get yourself rate limited or picked up running requests that quickly. But Fuff is my go-to tool. I often tell people that you can run Derb just like this, and you shouldn't find yourself in any trouble because Derb is pretty slow. But I like to use Fuff because of the options that are available with it. Now I want to go ahead and show you how to install SecList. I'm actually going to come back here. I do have Seclist already installed, which will save us some time, but you can come out to Google, go to their GitHub page right here, and you can run a git clone. So we'll copy that right here, and you'll want to cd into your opt, and then you can type in a git clone right here, just like this, and you can see it's the last thing I actually installed on here. This will take a little while to run, and then you can cd into the Seclist, and you can start looking through all of the different word lists that they have in here. So you have a fuzzing directory, you have a discovery directory, and I actually think the discovery has some pretty good word lists, and then we can cd into the fuzzing because that's what we're doing, and there is all of these different word lists for you to pick from when you're doing your fuzzing. So this is how I would recommend scanning a bug bounty program if you are looking for specific ports to be open or you are checking for directories. So good luck with your bug hunting. We're going to be covering the tool Shodan for the purpose of bug bounty hunting and searching for vulnerabilities, as well as information disclosure and how to use the tool within the command line as well as the actual browser. Shodan is an excellent tool for those who are new to the world of bug bounty hunting, or those who are timid when they read a program and it says that you should not scan a network and you don't really want to run Nmap and you're too afraid to actually scan the network. You can go check out Shodan because Shodan scans the network automatically and then stores all the information in its database. So all we have to do is know what queries to run to pull the information from Shodan and read their information from when they have crawled the network or the web browser previously, and then we have access to all of that information without having to scan the actual target, and you don't have to worry about breaking any program rules. So the way Shodan works is it actually goes out and crawls every single device that is connected to the internet, whether it be your thermostat, your refrigerator, or your web security cameras, and it'll see if there's any vulnerabilities. It'll store the information such as the software that is currently running on it, and if it has any vulnerabilities, it is now open to the web and anyone can access your information, your thermostat, your refrigerator, your webcam, or even your printers. If they have any vulnerabilities, then the whole world will know it because all they have to do is query that specific version, such as WordPress 1.4.7. And if you have a web application that is running that specific WordPress version, the whole world is going to know it because there will be a CVE on it and you will be open to a potential attack. So the way Shodan works is it just crawls all of the internet and stores all of the information that it can possibly grab for anything that is connected to the internet. So what we're going to do in this video is run queries on Shodan, but because we're going to be doing this with a free account, you're only going to be able to run a very limited amount of commands or scans. If you're actually wanting to use the Shodan scan feature, you're going to actually have to pay for it. I think it's $70 a month, which is kind of steep. I personally would rather just scan it myself with Nmap and look at the ports I specifically want and read the information that comes back that way. But I know that some of you would probably rather just pay the $70 a month and have access to the monitoring feature that we're going to cover a little bit later on. So typically when I think of the people who are going to enjoy Shodan the most, I often think that black hat hackers are going to be the ones who love Shodan the most because it stores all of the different version numbers, and if a new CVE comes out and somebody says, okay, we have this vulnerability to this specific software, they can just scan all of the internet and find out what devices are running that specific software because black hats don't really care. They can just attack anything. But this can also be helpful for bug bounty hunters as well, because if a new CV comes out, you can go out the same way as a black hat would and say, Shodan, show me all of the devices running this specific software that are vulnerable to this CVE, and then you can download all of those devices and look through them to see if there are any web applications that are running that specific software, and then see if they have a bug bounty program and report it. This is going to be kind of tedious, but it'll be really easy bugs to find and vulnerabilities to report, because all you have to do is read the downloaded file and look for open bug bounty programs on those specific web applications. So an example of Shodan being used in a really massively way, kind of for an unethical purpose, can be seen on Darknet Diaries. I forget the name of the specific episode. I think it came out a couple months ago, and the guy goes by the hacker Giraffe, where he actually used Shodan to look for vulnerable printers, and he printed Subscribe to PewDiePie to over 50,000 different printers. He was able to do this really easily and really quickly quickly because he was able to just use Shodan to look for vulnerable printers. And so in that episode of Darknet Diaries, I think you can just look up Darknet Diaries Hacker Giraffe and listen to it if you want. All that guy did specifically was go to Shodan and look for vulnerable printers, and it seems like that's kind of one of his go-to tools, is to go to Shodan, look for some vulnerable software, and then look at all of the devices that happen to be vulnerable to that specific software or CVE. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Here we are. I have gone ahead and opened up a terminal, which you will want to do, and then you will also want to go to shodan.io. I'm already logged in. You'll click login over here. I personally just log in with Google, and this is a non-paid account, so we are going to be looking at basically the exact same setup that you're going to have when you first open up Shodan. The first thing we're going to do is be using Shodan from the terminal. So if you just come in here and type in Shodan and hit enter, you're going to get a bunch of options. Now these options are going to be default, and Shodan should already be installed on your Kali Linux machine. So I'm not going to actually walk you through how to install Shodan because we're going to run it straight from here first in the terminal, and then we'll go through and actually check out the browser version later on. I've decided to show both the terminal and the browser because there are some people who really like running things straight from the terminal, and you'll be able to play around with it and figure out exactly what you like. And then there are other people who like to have a graphical user interface, and they'll like the browser version better. And so what we're going to do is go ahead and initialize our Shodan for the terminal, and you can see this right here, this init. So we're going to end up running a Shodan init, but we also need to have our API key. So you'll want to go ahead and log in. So you'll want to go ahead and create an account and log into Shodan just like this, and then you will click account and you'll be able to grab your API key right here. So we'll copy this and come back to our terminal, and we're going to type in Shodan init, and then you will paste in your API key and hit enter, and it tells us that it has successfully initialized. And now we are ready to start making some Shodan queries. So the first thing we can do is just run a Shodan info right here and see what it tells us about our account. So we can type in Shodan info and then hit enter, and it's going to tell us we have 0 credits available and scan credits available, and that is probably because I have already ran some queries with this over here on the website, but it's not really going to make a difference. I'm going to show you how to run these queries. I just might not get the results back that you will. Every time you make a request, whether it is over here on the actual browser or it is inside of the terminal, it is going to use one of the credits that you have, but you can always pay and subscribe to Shodan and have more credits. Most of the bug hunters who are successful will have a paid subscription to Shodan, and they really like using Shodan, and we're going to cover why it's helpful. But personally, a lot of the stuff you're going to be able to get on Shodan, you can find your own self by running some different tools, which I've covered on my channel previously, but that is not the purpose of this video. So the second thing I want to show you is often when you want to run something, like let's say we want to run this Shodan scan right here, what we can do is we can run Shodan scan and then a -h, and it's going to tell us the options for the actual scan right here. So you can run a Shodan -h, and then you can run the Shodan scan -h, and it's going to tell you the list of commands that you can run with each one of these commands that comes first. So when you're using Shodan, it'll be really helpful for you to know that you can run the -h with each one of these so that you know exactly what you're going to be getting back and exactly how to get the information that you want in the future. And a lot of your understanding from these right here is going to come from playing around with them and reading the documentation and just pressing the -h on each one of them and figuring out what exactly they do. So one of the first ways to check out Shodan is we can just say Shodan and then count, and then we'll say WordPress. And when you run this might not work for me because I don't have any credits, but when you run something like this, you can see that we just want to count the number of results for this search. So what will happen is Shodan will go out and count all of the servers that it has in its database that are running this WordPress right here, and it actually did tell us. It tells us that it has 52. But if you wanted to run something a little more specific, I spelled that wrong. That makes more sense. So 500,000. So if you were to run something like this, you might want to say you're looking for WordPress version 1.4.7 because that's what your target is running, or there's maybe a new CVE out there and you just want to see, okay, what web apps are running WordPress 1.4.7, and then Shodan will give you a list of those actual web apps that are running that, and then you can see if any of them have a bug bounty program and then report to them, hey, this new CVE for this WordPress has come out. So it saves you from having to go out and actually find a specific target and then looking to see what it is running, because Shodan will actually do the heavy lifting for you. And so all you have to do if you are a bug bounty hunter is say, this is the version, a brand new CVE has come out for it. So you'd say Shodan 1.4.7, which I actually don't even know if this is a real version. You would run this, and it is, and you would say, okay, there's 7 web apps that are running this version currently in the Shodan database, and then you would just go out and look to see if any of these 7 have a bug bounty program, and if they do, you can report, hey, the CVE came out and you're vulnerable to it. And so that's a really simple way to find bugs, and it's all based on recon, and you really don't have to do any heavy lifting. Very simple. You've seen how fast this has gone, and you could potentially have found a bug if this version were vulnerable to a CVE that had just come out. So if you're familiar with Nmap, what Shodan does is pretty similar. It goes out, scans the network, and it crawls all of the internet and pulls the banners, the versions, what's running, if it's Apache, if it's Windows, if it's got WordPress running, and what ports are open. And so with Shodan, we can just query all of this, and it stores this in the database. And that's how it already knows that there is 7 web apps running this WordPress 1.4.7, because it is already, all it has to do is check its database, and it doesn't actually have to go out and scan. But we can scan with Shodan, and we're going to look at this in a little bit, but I just want you to know how Shodan works, and it already has stored all of this information on there. So now you can see how this is kind of a go-to tool for the black hat hackers, because they don't really care if these 7 web applications have a bug bounty program or not. They just are going to attack it and see what information they can get out, because they don't really care about following the legal rules and the law. But as a bug bounty hunter, you need to make sure that these 7 web apps, if they were vulnerable to a CVE that could attack WordPress 1.4.7, you would want to make sure you do everything legally, that you actually don't exploit the CVE. There's no need to actually go and try and exploit it. You can just report it. Hey, there's a CVE that came out and you are vulnerable, and you should be rewarded for it. And so as a bug hunter and a penetration tester, we're looking for very specific targets, and then we can just run through these 7 real quick and see who actually is vulnerable. So now if we actually want to see what these 7 web applications are that are running this WordPress right here, we can use the download feature within Shodan. Now, I personally, if I was attacking a specific target, would just run Nmap instead of using Shodan for this. But I want you to be aware that you can actually pull down version numbers of web apps with Shodan itself. But personally, I would run Nmap just to grab the banners and the version of a specific target. This is something that you would be using if you were just looking for a CVE that just came out, like we were previously talking about. And we would use the download function for this. So we would just grab Shodan, and then we would say download, and then we're going to download the file as, let's say, WordPress file. And I'm not actually sure if it will work with this version number. I've only ever ran it without the version number. So maybe we can throw this inside of quotes and see if this works. If not, we will just run it without quotes and see how that runs. So we'll run this, and it has saved 5 results into our WordPress JSON file .gz, and we can unzip this and grab the file by typing in gunzip, and then we want to run our WordPress file, and then if we ls, we should have our WordPress file.json. And I do not have gedit installed because this is a new machine, and if you don't have gedit installed either, you can sudo apt update, and I've already done a sudo apt update recently, so I'm going to sudo apt install gedit, and this will only take a second to download. And now we can gedit our WordPress file right here, and we can look at the contents, and this looks really messy. So what you can do is actually just copy this, hit a Command A and a Command C, and then we can come over here and we can just type in BEA unifier like this. And we can just click on the top one and see if it will work for us. Paste in the JSON for us and type, you can click beautify, and now we have our results right here. So it actually looks the same over here. It actually didn't make any difference. So maybe this one doesn't work for us. It tells us we have an error. Okay, we're gonna just look at it right here. So you can actually see right here, you get a hash. You are told it's from Shodan. It'll tell you the region from where the web app is coming from. It's going to give us the time that it was crawled. We get the server that it is running on. And we have all of this different information here that Shodan has crawled from this specific target. We actually grab an ASN number. If you were looking for a specific target and you needed to pull down a version, and you were looking for a specific CVE and you wanted to download, so you could actually see what the Shodan databases have stored for the WordPress 1.4.7, instead of just seeing, oh, there's 7 of them, you would download it into a file just like this right here. And then you would unzip it, and then you can gedit and actually look at the contents of the file and find the servers and the subdomains, the URLs, the AS numbers, and there's a lot of information in there that's going to be really helpful for you in your recon phase if these targets are actually vulnerable and they do have a bug bounty program. So one of the other things you're able to do with Shodan is to run an IP address on the Shodan crawlers. And so one of the ways to grab an IP address, so one of the ways you're going to be able to find the IP address, there's several different ways that are going to be really easy. So if we wanted to run, just say, a host yahoo.com, it's going to give us back right here this range of IP addresses that are running on yahoo.com. And if you wanted to just ping yahoo.com, we will be told right here is one of the IP addresses that we were able to ping. So if you look for this 74.14326, we can scroll up and see that this is one of the IP addresses right here. You're actually able to find IP addresses through Burp as well. So what we can do is come over here and open up a new tab, type in yahoo.com, and we can open up Burp and intercept with the proxy. And if we run this, you'll actually be able to see right here on 443, you have this 9837111163. And if you come back here, you should be able to find right here. And so there's several different ways to find IP addresses for a specific domain. I'm actually going to close out of this, but this is one way to do that. And then you can just type in Shodan, and then we would type in host, and then we can grab one of these IP addresses that we just saw and run it within Shodan, and it's going to give us some information right here. It's going to tell us that this port 80 is open and port 443 is open, and it'll give us other information. If you specifically want to look for an SSL certification, you can find those, and it's going to tell us it's running these different versions, and you can go check to see if these SSL versions are out of date or what you can do with these within your recon phase. You also get these other host names right here that can be associated with IP ranges, and you can run a Shodan host with an IP range, and it's going to pull down a bunch more information for you within the entire range. It'll give you all of the ports that are open with the IPs. And so the difference here between what we're able to find between Google and Shodan is Google goes out and crawls the pages to see what is reachable, but Shodan crawls all of the internet connected devices, and this is why you would find a refrigerator that might be connected, or a webcam, or somebody's property cameras, or literally anything that is connected to the internet like a thermostat. And Shodan actually crawls everything that is connected to the internet and stores the data. So one of the good things about running Shodan like this is sometimes you are going to come across bug bounty programs. They're going to tell you that you are not allowed to scan a specific network, and as new bug bounty hunters, I know there is a lot of questions about what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. And so Shodan is a great way to scan a network without actually scanning a network, because Shodan already has stored all of the information that you're going to be looking for, and you just have to go out and find it. You have to know what commands to give, such as this one right here, if you're looking for open ports. I personally would rather just run Nmap with the ports that I want to find, such as port 22, port 80, 443, 1443, 3389, or whatever other ports that you might come across. But I would rather run Nmap with specific ports, but I know there are some people who really worry about this, and Shodan is a great option, such as this Shodan host right here, to grab other domains. You can grab subdomains, and you can scan for ports and IP ranges. And so this is an option if you're worried about scanning a target in order to grab subdomains and open ports. And what I like to use for running subdomains is AMAS, and I'll go ahead and link my AMAS video in the description if you would like to learn more about that. So let's go ahead and look at scanning a host instead of just looking at this right here, the Shodan host. So with Shodan, you can actually just type in Shodan, we'll go scan-h, and we can look to see what our options are for scanning a IP. And so it tells us right here, we can scan an IP, and we can say Shodan scan, and then we can give it the IP that we want. And we'll just run this same IP address right here and see what information it gives back to us. It tells us we need to give it a command. So we can say submit right here, because we're gonna submit an IP address. It tells us that I don't have any credits to actually run this scan submit, so I would need to actually go and pay in order to get my API key right here, some credits, but I am not going to do that. So this is another way to go ahead and scan a network or an IP address to find what is open and do a little more recon with this. You can also go out to, I can't even remember what it's called, Hurricane Electric. I think it's bgp.he.net. All right, so here we are. We can just type in yahoo.com, and I've shown this before in another video, so we'll just go Yahoo, and this website seems to be running really slow, but you would just run the search up and it has come back. So you can grab these AS numbers right here, or these ASNs is the easier way to say it, and I would run these through AMAS personally because it would be easier, but you can run these through Shodan as well. Shodan is going to be a lot faster because all it has to do is query back to the database, whereas AMAS seems to take quite a bit longer in getting you the information back. But you can come out here and grab a network range, scan a network range. You can look through these ASNs and see what you can find right here. I've already made a video about that, so I'm not going to go into too much detail about that. But like I said, I personally would go with Nmap if I was going to scan any kind of network or anything like that. Now we're going to move on to the web browser. So what's really cool about running Shodan in the browser is they give you this filters cheat sheet. So if you wanted to look for a specific network or a range or a CIDR range, you can do that right here through the search filter. And the way you would do these commands is by typing in, say we wanted to find the organization Yahoo like this, we can search it and it's going to pull it down for us. Let's see what else I've ran up here. If we delete this, we can run an IP address, and we already ran this one, and it'll pull down the information. Here's that port 80 that it said was open. Here's port 443, and it has grabbed us all of the banners right here, and we can read through them and see what is running. You can also download the reports from here as well. One of the cool things about running through the browser is you can actually look for sensitive information disclosures if you just continue to look through here, and you'll need to read through the cheat sheet. And I would also recommend reading through like their documentation, because there's way more examples that you're going to be able to use. So if we wanted to look for something that's running Apache with a specific Apache version, you could look to see if you're able to run, maybe there is a Apache 1.7.4 that actually has a vulnerability. You can come up here and you can just type in the product Apache with the version number and see if you're able to find any vulnerabilities for that Apache version, just like this. And you would run through here and say, okay, these people might be vulnerable to this? Do they have a bug bounty program? Okay, these people are running this version. Do they have a bug bounty program? And so there's a lot of different ways you can be creative with looking for known vulnerabilities, new CVEs, looking for bug bounty programs that are vulnerable, and then you can look for sensitive information with Shodan because it doesn't know what is going to be sensitive or not. It's just going to grab all of the information and store it in the database, and it's up to you as the bug bounty hunter to look at that specific target and see if there's any sensitive information being disclosed on Shodan, and then you can report it. Okay, and one of the last things I want to cover is the monitor function, and you have to have an account in order to use this, but this is something that you might be interested in. The monitoring is you can enter in a specific target such as yahoo.com, and it will update you whenever a new software comes out or whenever there's an update made to the program that you are trying to monitor. It'll let you know, and you can be one of the first ones to go and check out that new subdomain or domain if it is in scope. Or if they update a software, you can be one of the first ones to go see if there are any CVEs out for that specific software that they have updated. So the monitor is one that bug bounty hunters really like to use because you are able to get notifications of when things change on a specific target, and you'll be one of the first ones to know, one of the first ones to be able to go out and test it. But you will need to be willing to pay $70 a month. I personally don't think it's worth it, but I know there are a lot of bug bounty hunters who do think it's worth it. So it might be worth it to you to monitor and just pay the $70 a month so that you can follow specific targets and be one of the first ones to go out and check those targets for vulnerabilities. So that concludes our video on Shodan. One of the things I want to make sure you understand is that when you run a Shodan scan and you're thinking about trying to exploit something, you need to make sure that it's in scope and has a bug bounty program. Otherwise, you could be getting yourself into some legal trouble. And make sure before you go ahead and start looking at a specific target to see if it has a bug bounty program. So if you have any comments or questions, please let me know down below, and I'll try to get to those as soon as I can. Thanks for watching. We are going to be covering how to take notes for the world of bug bounty hunting, or maybe you are wanting to become a penetration tester. Note taking is going to be really important to you, and your method of note taking and actually being able to go back and overview what you have already done and gone through your checklist is going to be really important. So in this video, I'm going to show you how I take notes, and we're going to use Cherry Tree within Linux because everybody's going to have access to this. I personally use OneNote, but it's going to be really similar to what I'm going to show you in this video. Some of the benefits of taking really good notes is going to be having organized thoughts and being able to write a really simple proof of concept. You'll be able to have screenshots and be able to see what you have previously done, and you're not going to waste a lot of time going back to subdomains that you've already enumerated and looked at because you already have all of your notes there for you and know that you've already looked at it. And if a new vulnerability comes out, you can go and see when the last time you enumerated, looked at this specific subdomain, and know if the new CVE is going to be applicable to this specific domain and the software that's running on it. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into it. So here we are on our Kali Linux machine. We can come up to the little drop down menu and we can type in Cherry Tree and it will be automatically installed if you're running Kali Linux. So using Cherry Tree is going to be really pretty simple. The first thing you're going to want to do in your notes is you're going to have the main domain and all of the information that you found on it. So you can type in the domain.com and this is going to give you this parent node right here. And you can also change up your note taking method, and maybe you want to have the main domain and you have each subdomain right here. Like this, you could have subdomain 1, only it would actually be the subdomain name right here, and then you'll have all of your nodes from that subdomain. But if you do this, there are some programs that have like 800 subdomains, and this would take forever to do, but you can come in here and do every single subdomain like this. And so it'd be, we could just say sub.domain.com, spelled that wrong, like this. And then you would have all of your notes within this specific subdomain. So if you decided to go this way, one of the things I would suggest doing right out of the beginning is when you put in your first subnode is maybe just call this the software right here, and you can say that it's running some kind of CMS, maybe it's running WordPress, and then you would have the version of 4.2.4 4, and then you can know that this is what's running. So that way in the future, if there's any kind of CVE that comes out for the WordPress version that's running, you can come back to this subdomain and see if it's vulnerable to that new CVE. Another reason you're going to want to have some kind of list of the subdomains. So let's go ahead and delete this one right here so it looks a little better. If you decided to run a bunch of subdomains in here, so we can type in sub1.domain.com, and in here you have a list of all of your subdomains. You can have actually subdomains in here within this specific thing that you're looking at. So in here we could say software, and you can see how this is going to organize our research for us. And inside of the software in here, you would put your WordPress and then the version that it is running. So these are a couple different ways to kind of organize your notes. And another way to save time instead of actually going through and typing all of this out is on this box I already have Wapalyzer installed. So I could just we can come to the browser and type in like google.com and open up Wapalyzer to see what information is there. And now we could open this up right here, and I could just screenshot this and pull that screenshot over to my Kali machine, and then I can put it into Cherry Tree. So I could grab this and pull it over and put it into Cherry Tree. I actually don't have this specific Kali box set up to do that, so it's not going to work for this one. But on my actual personal Kali Linux machine that I use, I can just pull screenshots back and forth over to my Kali machine and save them inside of Cherry Tree. But I use OneNote, so I don't really have to worry about that too much. So screenshotting and adding information in here is going to be helpful as well if you have that capability. And one of the things I like to do is at the end of a recon session is make a node like this, and we'll just call it a recon node, and then in here I write down all the tools I ran and the way that I collected all of the information. So that way I have a clear set of notes, and that way if I ever come back to this specific target, I can see if maybe I missed something, or maybe I've learned some kind of new recon technique that I can try out on this specific target, and I'll know what exactly I have done on this target and what I can do in the future to further analyze the information on my specific target. So make sure to write down your methodology of your recon and attack, because it may change in the future, and you might be able to go back to old notes and old targets and further do enumeration and testing. And lastly, one of the things that is going to be really helpful for you in your note-taking process is to have some kind of checklist. And so one of the last things you're going to want to have is a good checklist of vulnerabilities and recon. And you can just go out to Google and look for a bunch of different checklists and find whichever one works best for you. Maybe copy, paste it, and put it into a Word document and modify it and make your own. But in the meantime, you can just Google bug bounty checklist and click on one of the checklists and then look to see what is in here, and you can follow their recon. Maybe there's something in here you don't like. I used to use HTTP probe, but I decided I actually like going out and checking things manually, so I don't use this anymore. But it would be helpful for you to have something like this, some kind of checklist, so that way you don't miss any bugs or vulnerabilities or maybe hidden subdomains that you would have otherwise missed without a checklist. So this will be really helpful for you as you're working on your recon skills in the future and developing them. So there's a lot of ways to take notes. I showed you Cherry Tree only because it's in Kali Linux, and everybody who is going to be running a virtual machine is going to have access to Kali Linux, and they're going to have access to Cherry Tree. But I personally use OneNote, and maybe there's something else out there that you like to use. All right, we are going to look at a URL real quick and look at the different parts of the URL just so you can get an understanding of what is going on when you look at these. It's really important in your recon phase to be able to know what URLs look interesting that you can copy and paste into your notes so that you can come back once you have finished your recon phase and actually start testing. So I've gone ahead here and just typed out a basic example, and you're probably all familiar with the HTTPS and the HTTP protocol, and it is labeled as the schema. The www dot is not always there. This is labeled as the subdomain because sometimes this could be a subdomain listed as sub.domain, and so this is actually a subdomain, but that is the same thing as the www dot. And so right here we have the domain name, which would be like google.com, and I'm not really sure why the .com is actually listed as the top domain level, because you can use in here like .uk, .fr, for different countries, a .net, a .org for an organization, and it's still called the top domain level, but that is this portion of the URL. So all of this is pretty basic. You can fuzz this right here, the subdomain, and the most popular subdomain fuzzer that I can think of is wfuzz. I'm sure you can use other fuzzers, but wfuzz is one that seems to work really well for me when I'm doing a subdomain fuzzing. And then right here is when we start to run into the path or the location to the contents is how I have it labeled here. But I usually think of this as a directory, this as a directory, and then eventually you're gonna hit a actual page, and you can actually delete some of these and you could just go to blog and see what's there. But this is the path or the location of the page. Now here comes kind of the good part for us to look at. And before we move on, you can actually fuzz for different directories right here the same way you would fuzz for subdomains and look for different directories within the subdomain or domain. And now when we move on to right here, the question mark, what you need to remember about the question mark within the URL is that it signifies a query and a parameter is about to be dropped in. And this is where we can start messing with the URL to see what information we can pull back from the server. So you can try and look for an LFI, an RFI, an SSRF, and actually right back here, you can look for directory traversals, but you have a parameter. Usually it'll be labeled as something other than parameter. One of the ones that automatically throw up a red flag for me is when I see a parameter that says URL and then this query, you're going to look to see if this is querying the actual server itself. And if it is, you can start to look for a server-side request forgery or something along those lines. But let's say this just has like an ID right here of 42. And you can go ahead and start changing this 42 to other numbers and see what information you can come back and maybe see if you can access some information that you're not supposed to. So this is a URL, and one of the reasons I wanted to show you this is because when you're in your recon phase and you're not yet testing, to remember to save URLs that look really interesting to you with different parts that you're able to change or fuzz that you think might pull back some information that you should not have access to. In this video, we're going to talk about how the DNS works, or the domain name server. So if you decide you want to type in something like google.com, how does your browser know where to go and find the Google IP address to resolve the web page to you? So I Googled how DNS works and had to go through a few pages before I found something that was actually good for an example, and I thought this was a really good example, so we're going to go ahead and walk through it. So you have a person right here who types in a domain right here, and they type in dnssimple.com, and it will check the web browser's cache, which you will see right here on your local machine, to see if you have visited this page before. So if you ever go to facebook.com and you're logged in the future, next time you go to facebook.com, it automatically logs you in because you have stored your session and cookies in your cache on your actual browser. So it will automatically log you in. But if you log into facebook.com using Firefox and then you go to Chrome and you try to log into facebook.com, you're going to have to re-authenticate because it doesn't have that stored in your browser cache. So the first place when you type in a web address, it is going to go to the web browser to see if it's stored in the cache. And before we move on, here you can see right here, google.com, they have an IP address for that. The reason you have actual domain names attached to IP addresses is because it's easier for us to remember a domain name such as Facebook rather than a string of numbers for facebook.com or a bunch of other web apps. We just remember we need Google. We don't need to remember this string of numbers right here. So the purpose of a domain name is to give you an easy way to remember the contents of a specific IP address, which is going to resolve to either Google or Facebook or Wikipedia, as you see right here. So that is the purpose of the domain name. So after your browser tries to gather the information and it's not able to, we can go to the next page, and it shows the packets moving out to the ISP server, which is going to be your internet service provider, which we're told right here. And it's going to ask, how do we find this website? And it is going to tell us that the root server knows where to find the location for the .com TDL, and we've talked about the TDL before. It is the top level domain, which can be .com, .org, .edu, .uk, .fr, and many others. So those will be the top level domain servers, and it's going to tell you to go out to the root server, and the root server is going to give the information back for which TDL server you are looking for that's going to contain the information you want. So if you want the .com TDL, or if you want the .org TDL, and the root server is going to pass the information on to the next server in line to give you the information. So here we are at the root server, and our packets are going to make the request, and we're going to be told that it doesn't know where to find DNSSimple.com, but it's going to be able to tell us where the TLD is located, and it's going to send us on our way. So you can see here is root, and here are the TLDs, and it's going to send us to the right one. So before we move on too far, if you're wondering how this would work with, say, something like the Tor browser, my understanding of how the Tor browser works is that it's going to encrypt all of your data so that the ISP isn't actually able to track the web application that you are trying to reach, and the Tor network opens up a bunch of nodes for your encrypted data, and it doesn't actually go through this process until after it has reached the exit node. And that is how your ISP, your internet service provider, is not actually able to track where you are sending your requests to. And the same thing would work with a VPN as well. So on to the next page, and it gives a little bit of a history that we don't really care about on the TLDs. And finally, we make it to the .com TLD, and it's going to say here is the name server 1 and the name server 2, name server 3, and name server 4. I'm not actually positive, but I think all domains will have 4 name servers. So if you host with Cloudflare or Google domains, and I'm pretty sure with any other hosting companies, you're going to have this NS1, NS2, and you're going to see this when you're actually setting up your domain to resolve to a specific IP address. So it's going to send you to the name server at this point, and you get sent on your way to the next page. And here you make it to the NS1, and the NS1 says, I can give you the IP address, and then you get the IP address and you're able to resolve to that specific IP address that you queried in the beginning, such as google.com. So I hope this made sense. If not, you can watch it again, or you can read through this. You can see the URL is right here for you to go to, or you can Google around and read maybe something else that explains to you how DNS works if this was too confusing. And if not, you don't necessarily need to know all of this information to move on into the world of ethical hacking, but I thought it'd be helpful for you to understand how the web works. Alright, in this video we're going to cover a tool that is called Dig, and it will check for zone transfers. You're going to hear about zone transfers. It is a great way to find additional subdomains. You can use FUF and GoBuster and WFuzz and try and brute force for subdomains and use Sublister, but you can also use Dig. It's really quick, and if there are any subdomains, it's really helpful tool because you'll find them right away. So a DNS zone transfer is supposed to replicate a DNS database between DNS servers, which means if it is vulnerable to a zone transfer, it will give us information like subdomains and some other information, which we'll see in just a second. So we'll go ahead and run this. I have opened up the box friend zone from HackTheBox because it is vulnerable to a zone transfer. And if you find a bug bounty program that's vulnerable to a zone transfer, you're not actually able to exploit it and hack per se the web application. But when you find a zone transfer and something is vulnerable to a zone transfer, you can report it as information disclosure because it's something that should not be open to the world. So the easy way to test this is with a tool called Dig, and we'll just type in Dig. So we'll go dig AXFR, and then we will say @ and then we're going to use the IP address, and then we'll use friend zone because that is the domain that we are after, .red, and then we can run this and see what it spits out for us. We have friend zone, and administrator one. So this would be something that would be worth checking out. We have this HR. We have an uploads, which would also be something worth checking out if you're doing a CTF or if you find this information out in the wild. And so you can actually save all of this into an out file, and we'll just call it zone, just like this. And then from other recon that is done on this box, you also find another domain called friendzone portal, just like this, and we can run it. And we find admin, files, imports, VPN, and you have all of these files as well. And so if you double caret, it will just append to our file. So if we cat out zone, we have all of this information. And now if you have taken my little bash course, you know that we can cat out the zone, and we can go like this, and we can say grep friend zone and make sure that works. And so it'll point out, it'll give us all everywhere that friend zone is located. And then we can say grep in, and then we want to awk for our cut, and go ahead and put in our curly braces and quotes, and we can say print $1 because we only want what is at the front of this file. And then we will see what happens. Yep, that's what I thought was going to happen. It gives us what we want, and then we can say sort -u, and this should get rid of our replications right here, and it does. It sorts it out for us, and we get rid of a lot of the repeats. And now you have this nice little happy file with just the subdomains that we have pulled down from the zone transfer. So zone transfer is something you should always look at, and if you're in a Hack the Box, you might have to add more of these to your Etsy host file. But out in the wild, these would be really good targets to go ahead and try to attack and find exploits on. So this is the zone transfer with the dig tool. You'll want to remember it whenever you see a port 53 that is open. That is the port that is used for a zone transfer. So a few things to remember about this specific tool. If you run an nmap scan, port 53, if it's open, you can always try for a zone transfer and see if you can pull down additional subdomains. It's a great place to grab subdomains. You can also report it as information disclosure if you are actually able to pull off a zone transfer. So with that, we will move on to the next tool. All right, I want to cover two more tools that are recon tools that you're going to hear about, but I don't really use a whole lot because I don't think I get a whole lot of helpful information from. But you're going to see these in pretty much every penetration testing textbook, every certification course you ever come in contact with, and they are Whois and NSLookup. We'll do NSLookup real quick because it doesn't give us back a whole lot of information, so we can just type in NSLookup just like this, and then you can do something like www.google.com, and it's going to tell you their IP address, the domain name. You're going to get the IPv6 name back, and it's going through port 53, and so this is a tool you would run if you see port 53 open, same as dig, and you can get just a little bit of information back with NSLookup. So you'll hear about this and you will definitely see it in the future. This is what it does. But then there's another one that you're going to hear about and see regularly, and it's Whois. And so if you type in Whois google.com, you're going to get back a whole bunch of information. And if you're ever doing like a penetration test, this is actually a good one to run because sometimes you can get back email addresses and a phone number and things like that about the company, but you can find out a little bit more about the company. So right here you see they're using the Google domain servers right here, which isn't that surprising being from Google. But if you look at this right here, Whois Google registered with, it's not even registered with Google domains, which is kind of ironic that Google does not have their own domain name registered with themselves. I'm guessing they must trust this Mark Monitor more with security than they trust themselves, which I mean is saying something. I think Google should probably switch that. But anyway, if you know why they're using Mark Monitor instead of Google domain names, then you can feel free to let me know in the comments. Maybe they're just using it just because they've never changed it once Google domains came out. Anyway, this is Whois, and it just tells you more information about the domain name and where it's registered and the kind of the security behind it and who's running it, and you can look up to see if there's any vulnerabilities or anything like that. You're probably not going to find a whole lot from Whois other than just about the domain name, where it's registered, who's it registered with, an IP address, and basic information like that. So these are two tools that you're going to hear about for sure in the future and would be worth remembering, but I don't use them all that much because I don't find them to be that helpful. I wanted to let you know about them because you will see them and hear about them in the future, and now you know what they are and what they do. Another tool that would be worth your time investigating is the Harvester. It looks like this, and this tool will go out and look for other domains and subdomains, and it will also find email addresses if you're a penetration tester for you to try and target. And the usage is really pretty simple. You just type in the Harvester, and then you would pass in a domain with the -d, and then you can pass in the source that you want to look for something. So you would just use domain.com, and then let's say we wanted to use Google, you can put in a -b and then google.com or any of these other options down here for the source, and it will go out and it will try to look for domains, and it will scrape all of these search engines for subdomains, email addresses, and things of that nature. So the Harvester is a penetration testing tool that you're going to hear about from time to time, and it's one to be aware of and know that it exists. You're probably not going to use it in any pursuit of certifications or CTFs, but it is a really great recon tool and one you should know about and be aware of. I'm going to be looking at CertSH. I've gone ahead and pulled it up here. This is actually the second time shooting this video because I forgot to press record the first time. But when all else fails, when you're looking for subdomains, the cert.sh is going to be a great place to come. It's going to give you the certification tickets for the domain that you are looking at. So we'll go ahead and open this up, and I'm going to type in tesla.com, and we can hit search and look at the subdomains that it pulls down. And you're interested in this middle row right here, because if you look at this closely, you can see these subdomains right here for tesla.com. And so this will give you a bunch of subdomains for you to go out and look and test for bugs and see if there's any information out there or anything you want to test against. When I look at something like this, one of the first things when you have so many subdomains is to see which ones look specifically interesting to you, and then you can go and check those, but always make sure that they are in scope. So you'd want to make sure that this assets, first of all, is owned by tesla.com, and then you'd want to make sure that it's in scope. And second, a tip is to look for the dev. Typically these dev sites and these dev subdomains right here are going to be hosting information or new software or new code before it goes live on the actual main domain. And so these devs are always something good to look at. Another one that's good to look at is look at like admin portals and see if you can get into any of those, or fuzz for directories, because there might be something there that you might need authentication for in order to see, but you can access it without being authenticated. So the devs, the admins, pages like those, this API would be interesting to look at. And so you can come in and look at all these subdomains. If AMAS and Sublister are not pulling back enough subdomains for you, you can always come to srt.sh and check this out. So in this video, what I think we're going to do is I'm going to show you how to grab all of the different possible URL targets for you within a bug bounty program, and then we're going to start to narrow it down to the URLs that are actually responsive, and then the ones that I think will be helpful for you to target as a beginner. And so I'm going to show you how to find the most obscure URLs within bug bounty programs for you to target, but always make sure to remember that these URLs are in scope. That's going to be really important, so always check that, because sometimes you'll see URLs that maybe are several years old and a specific bug bounty program has forgotten to remove them, and you're going to think this is a really great target, but it will end up falling into the category of out of scope. So make sure as you go through your recon phase to only target URLs that are in the bug bounty scope. This is something that I really struggled with. In the beginning, I would end up out of scope. So you don't want to do that. All right, there is something called the Wayback Machine, which is really cool. And we're going to be utilizing this, and thanks to Tom Nom Nom for making a Wayback tool that is really going to save us some time, as well as a couple of other tools. So if you want to check this out online, you can type Wayback into Google and you'll be brought to the Wayback Machine, and we can come right in here, and it tells us at the top that it has saved more than 737 billion web pages. And let's go ahead and check out what this does. So we can type in yahoo.com, and it's going to give us all of the screenshots that it has taken of yahoo.com from October 17th, 1996. So this is why it's called the Wayback Machine. And it doesn't just take screenshots, it'll actually store the URLs, and you can go back and check out the timestamps, and it'll show you what the web page actually looked like at that time. So if we click back here to the year 2000, and let's say we want to open up February 29th, 2000, we can do this. So we'll right click, say open in new tab, and it's going to render what that page looked like for us from its archive, which is pretty cool. And so this is what the main page looks like, and some of the HTML might not render quite right, but that's okay. So we just really want to grab the URL and a lot of the links that were available at that time, just in case they are still being hosted on our specific target and they have not removed them, which does happen. Programs and companies will be hosting up specific subdomains, and then after a while that subdomain is no longer in use. And this is really common with blogs on large companies. Say that PlayStation comes out with a new video game, they'll create a subdomain all about that video game, and then they will forget about that video game, and years pass by and that subdomain will still be up and it won't be updated, and it might be vulnerable to new exploits and CVEs. And so that's why we want to look back into the past and see if we can grab any subdomains or URLs or links that may lead us to bugs that other people have not checked for within those forgotten subdomains and links. So this is the Wayback Machine. You can come in here and get a feel for how it works. And now we're going to go ahead and install the Wayback tool by Tom Nom Nom. So what you will do is come to Google, and you're just going to type in Wayback Tom Nom Nom, and it's going to be the first tool here for us. And we're actually going to have to install the Go language before we're able to install this. So what you can do is open up a terminal and come in here and just type in Go, and if it doesn't turn green, then you do not have the Go language installed. So what we're going to need to do is run a sudo apt update just like this, and let this update. And if yours doesn't update or gives you some kind of warning, you might have to run a sudo apt upgrade and then run the sudo apt update. So now that we're all update, we can run sudo apt install go lang like this, and we'll say yes. And now if we type in Go, it should turn blue for us or some other color, meaning that we have the Go language installed. So we can come back to the Tom Nom Nom site, and we can just highlight this, and it's going to, and we can just copy this right here, and it's actually going to install the tool for us. And I think it installs it in the directory go/bin. So I'll show you that in just a second. We can paste this in, and I think we're gonna have to run this as a sudo. Okay, so when I ran it with sudo, it didn't work for me. So when it actually installs the proper way, it's gonna run just like this, and you're gonna see nothing in the output. And then what you're gonna wanna do is cd over to the go bin, and it's gonna look like this. Then you'll hit enter, and you're gonna automatically come into the directory like this. And then if you ls, you're gonna see the Wayback URLs within the file here. And the way we're going to run this is with this // and then the name of the tool that we want to run. And just so you can see what it looks like, you can run a -h and see the output here. Okay, so my other VM was freezing, so I went ahead and opened up a new one, which is just fine. It will all work the same. So I went ahead and installed it on this new machine, and you're going to find it in the Go bin. And so if I run an ls, you're going to see I actually have a couple other tools in here, but I'm going to show you how to install those in just a second. But this is the tool you just installed right here. So the way we're going to run it is really simple, but first we need to create a target domain for us. So we're going to gedit, and I'm going to gedit yahoo.txt. and we can just type in yahoo.com, and this is going to be our domain that we target. And if there's any subdomains in here, you would want to paste in like a sub.yahoo.com, and I'm going to show you how to grab these subdomains here in just a second. So we're going to leave it just like this. We will save, and now we can run the Wayback URLs tool. And while it runs, I'll show you how to grab the subdomains. So what we'll do is cat that file that we just made, and we're going to run it into the Wayback URLs just like this. And then you can actually save all of those into an out file by pointing it over to the file you would like to call it. So we'll call it yahoo.urls, and we'll let this run. And now while that runs, we're going to go ahead and grab some subdomains. So we're going to run an amass enum passive -d yahoo.com, and this might take a second, and it's going to give us a ton of subdomains that we would want to run the Wayback tool on. And so our goal is to find really old pages on these subdomains from the Wayback tool that are going to have some vulnerabilities. So we'll go ahead and close out of this. And what we're going to end up doing is just grabbing like 10 of these, because I don't really want to run the Wayback tool on all of these. You would run it on these if you were actually looking for any vulnerabilities within these pages, but my goal is just to showcase the tool for you. So we will copy some of these URLs and come back over here, and this is still running. So, oh, it just finished. So what we'll do is now we can gedit our yahoo.txt like this. And what you would do is you would run all of these subdomains in a file just like this. So you might want to save this amass right here into an out file so that you don't have to copy and paste, but that's okay that we're not going to do that. And we're going to save this, and now if we ran it, it would run and grab the valid URLs for all of these subdomains for yahoo.com. So now that we have that saved, what you would do is you would run this the exact same way you did right here, and it would run this Wayback tool on all of those subdomains that we just put in that file, and it would save them over here in the URLs for us. So what I want to show you is if we run a word count right here on this yahoo.txt, it's going to show us that's the file that we made. So we'd want to run it on the URLs, and it'll show us that we have more than 128,000 valid responses from the Wayback tool, and we don't necessarily want to visit all of these 128,000 URLs. And if we ran the Wayback tool with all of these subdomains, I bet we would have well over 1 million different URLs, and we don't really want to check all of those. So now we want to see which ones resolve in order for us to know which ones to target. So what we would do at this point is you're going to run a sudo apt install http probe, and it's going to look like this. I already have it installed, so you can go ahead and run it, and then after you run it, you can type in http probe to make sure that it's installed, and it should turn blue for you just like this. And the way we run it is the same way we would run the Wayback, just like this. So we're going to go ahead and cat out our Yahoo URLs just like this. And I'm going to actually delete the valid URLs. You can save it into an out file if you want. I'm not going to. I'm just going to let it spit out to the console and then cancel it. And so we would go ahead and run this. And I think this is URLs with an S, like that. And it's going to go ahead and start running this, all of those 128,000 URLs that we pulled down from up here. And it's going to start printing the valid ones out down here in the terminal for us. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel that. The valid URLs are going to get printed out just like this into the terminal, or you could save them into an out file. And then once you have the valid URLs, you can start to look through which ones you think are juicy and you want to target. One other thing I want to show you is if we type in our HTTP robe just like this, and we run a -h just like this, you can start to see if you want to give them a timeout in milliseconds. So I think there's 1,000 milliseconds in a second. So if you wanted to run an HTTP probe and you didn't actually want to wait for it to try and resolve each one for the default of 10 seconds, which is kind of a long time, you could change this and see if the web URL resolves in like a second. That's probably what I would do. So I would run a -t and I would say 1,000 instead of 10,000. So that way it only takes a second before it moves on to the next URL. So if it went to this URL and it didn't resolve, by default, it's going to wait 10 seconds to go to the next URL. And if you're running over 1 million subdomains, that's going going to take forever, especially because a lot of them are really old and are not going to resolve. So I would run it with 1,000, so that way it's 1 second. So if this did not resolve within a second, it's going to go ahead and go to the next one. So this is one of the most comprehensive ways to pull down the max number of URLs for you to target within a bug bounty program. In this video, I'm going to show you how to find subdomains, which are going to be really important for you if you do any kind of bug bounty hunting or penetration testing, because subdomains are usually targeted the least. And usually what happens is beginners just log into the main page and try and hack on the main page, and it doesn't really work out for them and they become really frustrated. So let's go ahead and jump into it. Okay, so here we are. We have opened up a terminal, and you're going to go ahead and sudo apt update, and then you're going to type in sudo apt install sublister. And I just want to show you sublister because it's really popular, and I used to use it a lot, but I've really stopped recently because it's not pulling down as many domains as I would like. So if we just type in something like sublister and then yahoo.com, we'll see what it pulls down. So you'll type in sublister -d for the domain. Actually, we can type in a -h for help, and you can see what all it's able to do. So we're going to type in a sublister -d, and then we'll just type in yahoo.com, and it's going to go out and search all these different search engines and then bring back the results. And remember, when you see all of these subdomains that it brings back, that you need to check to make sure they're in scope. Sometimes I'll show you what I do is I just open this up and I'll be like, okay, here's a subdomain, and let's go through these subdomains, and I'll show you what I think is the best way to do this. So if you're in Firefox, you're going to want to download something called OpenList plugin, and we want it on Firefox. So we'll just go ahead and add this, and it's telling you right here what this is going to do. It's going to open multiple URLs at a time, which becomes really helpful for us. It says we want to add, we're okay with adding, and here it is. So we now have this right here, and what OpenList does is when you have all of these subdomains and you want to see what happens, you can just copy these and then you can paste them in. So we'll just grab this one because I don't think it's going to have anything on it, so we'll copy this one. We can come over to OpenList and we can just paste in a bunch of URLs. So what we would do is you'd really just copy a bunch of these instead of the same one over and over. And then when you hit open URLs, it's going to open all of these tabs for you. It's going to be a lot faster than having to open one at a time. So here they are. It opened all of those for us. So that's one way to check out the subdomains you do find, but that's not the purpose of this video. That was kind of just an afterthought that popped in my head as we were shooting this video. So you have Sublister, and here's a list of subdomains that it's brought down. And you might be able to say, well, that's a decent sized list. So we'll scroll through it here. It's fine, but it's not as big as we would like. So one of the tools I've been using here recently is AMAS, and you can just type in AMAS-H and you can see exactly what it does. And it's going to tell you it's an in-depth attack surface mapping and asset directory. AMAS is really cool if you can get it to work. So sometimes AMAS can be a little bit finicky, but it'll work for us for what we're about to do. You just type in AMAS, and then we want to use enum because we're going to do enumeration right here. And then if you hit a dash, if you just hit enter with AMAS enum, it'll tell you everything you can do with the enumeration. And we're actually going to scroll up, and we're going to run a -d, and we're just going to give it a domain. And sometimes I like to run a -IP to grab the IP addresses for the discovered names, which can be really helpful. So we're just going to run AMAS enum -d, and then we'll just run yahoo.com. Actually, now that I see this is running and it's actually taking a little while, let's go ahead and close out of this. I want to run an AMAS enumeration, and I want to run a -passive, and then the domain right here, and then run this, and this should run a little bit faster than what we did have going. Okay, so AMAS is still running, but I want to show you, look at all of these subdomains that it has pulled down for us. This is going to be way more. It's so many that my terminal is actually lagging. So we'll go ahead and close out of this so that way it stops. And if we just scroll through here, look at all of these subdomains. This has way more subdomains than we had with Sublister. It is an insane amount. So all of these subdomains, you'll want to check to make sure that they're in scope, but look at all of these Yahoos. Like, this is a crazy attack surface. If you can find a program that has a really wide scope, then most of the subdomains you find will be in scope, but make sure to always check. I can't believe I'm still scrolling. There has got to be like nearly 1,000 subdomains right there. So AMAS is something you'll want to check out. I love AMAS enum, and then I run the passive because I think it runs a little faster, and then Yahoo. In this video, I'm going to show you some cool recon tools that are going to be able to help you figure out what kind of technology is running on a specific website that you may be trying to target, and an easy way to find out some version numbers and search for vulnerabilities. This can be really helpful for you to know what is being used and what technologies are running on a specific website, so that way you know what kind of attacks you should be looking for. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into it. All right, so here we are at tenet.hgb. This is a box from Hack the Box. I decided to use this because if there was something vulnerable on a live web application, I didn't want to accidentally show any information. So a few ways to find out what tech stack is being used is with a tool called Wappalyzer, and it is right here. I already have the extension installed, and you just come up here and you can click this extension and it'll show you what it is running. So you're running WordPress 5.6. Go to Google and type in WordPress 5.6, and then you can type in exploit or vulnerability and just read to see if there are any vulnerabilities or anything that needs to be patched with this specific vulnerability. Sometimes inside of here, you'll see something like this database. This is really helpful for targeting SQL injection. So you have a MySQL database. So if you find any places for any inputs, which I'm not sure if there are or not, you can try to pull off some kind of SQL injection. The Wappalyzer tool is really helpful in giving you the programming language. So if we're on a web application and we are testing it, if there is something like the programming language of PHP, there are some very specific ways to go about manipulating PHP or checking for PHP type juggling. There's different things you can do knowing just the programming language. And then something like this right here, we have the web server is Apache, and you can do the same thing we did with the WordPress 5.6, and we can go out and see if there's any vulnerabilities here that maybe have not been patched for this specific website. So Wappalyzer is a really great way to find out what kind of technology a web application is running. And so if you wanted to install this, you can just go to Google, type in Wappalyzer, and you can type in Wappalyzer, and I'm on Firefox, you might be on Chrome, and we can do Firefox, and then here's the extension, and you can just come over here. Instead of remove, you will click install. And the second one I want to show you is the React Developer Tools. This is a really cool extension. It will be right here. And whenever you're using something that's using the React framework, it will light up for you. So I went ahead and opened up Instagram, and you can see it light up blue right here. And it'll tell you this page is using the production build of React. And so we know Instagram is using React, and there's actually a lot of popular websites that use React, such as Uber Eats, Discord, Instagram, Skype, Pinterest, and many others. So knowing what is running, such as React, you're going to know that there's JavaScript, and then there are a lot of common frameworks that are used within React, and you can Google those. We're not going to go into those in too much detail. And then one of my favorite websites is right here, the W3 Techs. This is going to do something very similar to Wappalyzer. So right here, you can just enter a specific URL, and it's going to tell you what is being used, very similar to Wappalyzer. So if we just type in yahoo.com, it will pull back for us all of the technology that is being used. So it says it has some server-side programming with Java, JavaScript, jQuery. So you have this really old library right here, and it tells you there is a newer version. And so there's a lot of information in here. And if you have any questions about something like JavaScript, you can click on it and it'll tell you what JavaScript is, or jQuery, and how it is used. So there is one other way to kind of find out what kind of tech stack is being used. So if you come in here and you have Wappalyzer and we look at this, we can also come in and try to figure out what is being used within the JavaScript. Sometimes you'll be able to see comments or be able to work out what is being used on the website by coming in here and clicking on the debugger right here, and it'll tell you here is the JS and we have the JavaScript, and then you can click the pretty print down at the bottom and you can look through this JavaScript and see what you are able to find inside of here. So these are some of the common ways to find out what technologies are being used on websites. They can be really helpful for you to know what's going on and exactly how to attack a website, and these can be really really helpful for you in your recon phase and maybe even lead you to some kind of vulnerabilities just because you have a version number given to you. Okay, so now I want to show you the tool Nmap, and if you followed my channel for any length of time, you're familiar with the tool Nmap, but I want to show you how I like to run this tool and the information I like to look at and pull back from my targets. So Nmap is a port scanner, and if we run nmap-h, it's going to spit out for us all of the things that we can do with Nmap. One of my favorite things to do is run the -v with a -a. This is going to tell us about the open ports as they come back, and this is going to give us all the information. So it's going to tell us right here, enable OS detection. It's going to do script scanning, and it's going to look for different versions as well. So we can go ahead and type in an nmap-a, and usually you would run a -p- if you're doing like some kind of CTF, but if you were doing a bug bounty program and you're not wanting to knock on the doors of all the ports, you would just run the specific ports that you would like to see if they are open. And so I've gone ahead and opened up a hack the box, and so if we run this is what it's going to look like, and the -v is going to give us back the ports as it finds them. So it says a port 80 is open, and it has finished, and it tells us about the open ports. And one thing to note about Hack the Box is it says it did not follow the redirect, so it went out to see if port 80 was open. We were redirected to academy.htb, and if I actually wanted to open that up, and I keep getting this not found right here, that is because I need to add this to my Etsy host file, but we're not going to do that right now. That's not the point of the video. And we are told we have the Apache version, and it tells us our methods, and it gives us these ports are open as well. So this is how I like to run Nmap, and so we will continue on. There is one last way to search for subdomains and directories that I think will be helpful for you to know. Specifically subdomains, we've seen this before dealing with directories, but we're going to use the tool fuff, and this is the syntax that we're going to use. We're going to go ahead and fuzz for subdomains on yahoo.com. So the tool is pretty simple to use. We just type in fuff, the URL, which is going to be right here, and the location that we want to fuzz, which is for subdomains before yahoo.com, and this is going to brute force for us any subdomains that come back with the status code 200. And then we're going to use our word list, which is right here, and then we're going to use a slowdown of 1 second. So we can go ahead and run this, and you should be able to see subdomains start spitting out as it finds them. And here are a few different subdomains, and I want to we'll stop this right here. I want to show you. So we got this 301, which I believe is going to be a redirect, but we have different sizes, different word sizes. So you might want to go and check these out anyway. But just in case we didn't want to see these 301s, what we can do is, I think it is a -fc, and we can say 301, and now it won't show us any of those 301s. Sometimes that comes in handy when you are fuzzing and you keep getting 401 or 403, and we really don't want to see those. And so you can see here are some 200s. So if we wanted to, we could go out and look for these subdomains and see if any of them look interesting to us. Now, I have mentioned this before. You can also fuzz for directories, and you can use the fuzz like this in this location, and now if we run it, it's going to look for directories. And lastly, one thing I also want to mention is when you are fuzzing for APIs, Fuff is also a really great tool for this. So we'll go ahead and delete this, and if we were going to be looking for, let's say there's an API that looks like this, API.yahoo.com, and we wanted to fuzz for valid endpoints and see what we could find, we would just go ahead and run fuff like this and look for endpoints, and then go out to the web page if we are able to and look at the JSON. If not, I have a tool that will fuzz APIs for us and actually give us the JSON right here in our terminal, and you can go check that video out. I'll link it in the description if you would like to build that tool. It'll save you some time having to go out and look at the JSON itself, and it'll just print it right here in the terminal for you. So with that, that is Fuff and how we fuzz for subdomains and directories. All right, so it is always good to have a couple of tools in your tool belt. So you can go ahead and run derb like this, and we can run a yahoo.com, and we don't really need any more than just this right here. So it's just an HTTPS, and then we'll run yahoo.com, and it'll automatically start fuzzing for us just like that. It's really simple to use. So sometimes FUF might give you some errors or it's not working quite right, and it's always good to know of other tools. One of the cool things about Derb is you can run it recursively, and so once it runs all the way through your word list, and let's say it found yahoo.com/football, the next time it runs, it'll run yahoo.com/football, and then it will look for more directories within that football directory, which is really cool. So Derb is also a backup fuzzer just in case FUF isn't working for you. Another helpful tool that you're going to use, especially inside of CTFs, is WP Scan, and you're going to use this with WordPress sites. So I've gone ahead and opened up Hack the Box, and I have Tenant running here. And if you have a Hack the Box subscription and you're wanting to follow along, you will need to add tenant.htb to your Etsy host file, which I have already done. So the WP Scan tool is going to go out and look at all of the plugins on the WordPress site and see if any of them are vulnerable, if any of them are out of date. It's going to check the actual theme and see how old it is and how long it's been since it's had updates. And we can go ahead and check out WordPress Scan right here, the WP Scan -help, and it will tell us all of the different flags and everything that we are able to use. And one thing that I can never remember what it actually looks like is this right here, is the -- plugin detection. So what we will do is we'll type in WP Scan -- URL http / and then we're going to go tenant.htb, and then this -e right here is going to tell it that we want to check all of the plugins. I sometimes call it all ports out of habit, but I think it's all plugins. We can actually just look. If we scroll up, we're going to enumerate all plugins right here, and we want to use the -- and then we want plugins -detection, and then we want to use aggressive, and then you can do a -o if you want to save this in a file. I pretty much never do that. I'll just open a new tab and come back. Sometimes I'll have a whole bunch of tabs open up here, and it's not always that helpful. So it will flag things like this and tell you that a version is out of date. And I told you this in the last video, but I especially am really bad with WP Scan because you get a lot of information, but you should read all the way through all of this. I remember doing a CTF about 6 months ago, and I ran a WP Scan and I just like skimmed through it, and I ended up missing a vulnerability that gave me remote code execution, and I wasted several hours of my time enumerating when I should have just read the entire scan. So make sure you read the entire scan when you run one. It might take you a little bit of extra time, but it will always be worth it because it will give you information even if you think it might not be helpful. Like right here, it doesn't flag this, but it might be worth going out and checking this version 5.6. It's insecure on this specific release, and you can go and check these different version numbers, and this might take a little while because we're running the aggressive, but that is okay. So this is WP Scan. You're going to want to run this whenever you come across WordPress web applications. It is going to be your friend. You're going to use it regularly throughout your penetration testing career, especially in the world of CTFs. And always remember, read the output. In this video, we are going to cover how to choose a bug bounty program for you to attack. One of the first things you have to do is figure out a target that you want to start doing your recon on. And sometimes people can become paralyzed by analyzing all the different targets and trying to figure out which one they want to attack first. And so I want to try and help you figure out how to narrow down your options and then specifically choose one and then start your recon process with. So before we jump into this too far, I kind of wanted to give you a little bit of encouragement. And I'm not really a Star Wars fan, but I came across this quote a really long time ago and I found it to be really helpful. And it says, you want to know the difference between the master and the beginner? The master has failed more times than the beginner has even tried. And I think this is really helpful when trying to figure out how these top hackers are finding so many bugs and so many other people are struggling. It is because they have dedicated a lot lot of time to specific platforms and to learning this craft. And so we just have to keep moving forward every day, and you'll be getting better.
When life gets you down, you know what you gotta do?
I don't want to know what you gotta do.
Just keep swimming, just keep swimming, just keep swimming, swimming, swimming. What do? We swim.
So I decided to add just keep moving forward to a t-shirt recently because it really does show the perseverance that you have to have in the field of cybersecurity. So let's go ahead and take a look at HackerOne and narrow down some potential targets. And I'm going to show you my process for doing this. So let's go ahead and jump into it. So here we are on HackerOne, and one of the first things I like to do is come into the hackers, and then we need to go to the directory so that we can start looking for different programs. And now I like to click launch date, and I like to sort by the date. I want to go from the newest first. I accidentally clicked it one too many times, and I actually believe you have to be logged out of HackerOne to have this feature work. So if you're logged in, go ahead and log out, and then you can look through here. And then once you have them all sorted out, one of my favorite things to do is open them up and look at the scope. I like to see how big the scope is and make sure that there is a really large scope, because one of my personal biggest struggles is I will open up a program and I'll get started, and then in 20 minutes I find myself out of scope, and this can be a problem. So I really like to have large scopes. It also means you have a lot larger attack surface, and there's going to be a lot more diversity in where different bug bounty hunters have been looking and testing, and so you're more likely to find a bug. So let's go ahead and scroll through some of these, and let's look at some of the scopes. So maybe we can look at this link tree. I have actually never looked at this, but you can scroll down and look to see how large their scope is, and it seems like they have a pretty large scope. And then you need to make sure you stay away from these specific ones. And so make sure when you are searching for a target that it has a large scope. And one of the second things you should search for is something that you're really familiar with. So I've noticed that there can be a lot of like currency trading programs on here, and I'm not familiar with a lot of the online currency trading programs, so that's something that I'm going to just avoid. But maybe you're into shopping and you're like, I want to check out Fossil, I want to see what kind of scope they have, and you can come in here and read about it. Maybe you're really into gaming, and I'm pretty sure here's GameStop. There are quite a few game style programs on here, and you can go ahead and attack those. I'm pretty sure PlayStation is on here, GameStop is on here, and if you're familiar with those websites already, those are going to be something you're going to want to attack, because you're going to already know how the web app functions and what should be happening when you click on different links or log in. And so pick a program that you personally are familiar with and are already interested in. And a subpoint to this is pick a program that you're really interested in, because you are going to be interested in clicking through the website, seeing what's happening, what products there are, and maybe you'll be interested in looking at the products, and it's going to help you figure out how the website functions, just because you're going to be a normal user and there's going to be things on the website that you want to look at and click through and check out the functionality, but you're also really interested in what they have to sell. This is going to really help in keeping your interest. And so pick a program that you're familiar with, or one that offers some kind of service that you're really interested in, or products that they're selling that you would be a potential buyer of. Now, the reason I told you to sort the programs by date is because the newer the program, the less likely they are going to have already been tested by a bunch of different penetration testers or bug bounty hunters. And this is really going to help you land a vulnerability before anyone else, because the web application just hasn't been picked over as much as the older programs. And another tip to this, and is really popular and probably really common knowledge, is to choose a program that is unpaid. So you can come down to one of these unpaid programs and hack on one of those, because the top hackers are going to be going after the programs that offer rewards and financial gain, because they're doing this for a living. And if you're just trying to get that first bug, then you can go for the unpaid programs, and then also the newest unpaid program. And the last tip is kind of an OSINT tip, and I think this is really going to help you in your ability to find bugs based on what the developers are posting. So go on to all the social medias and follow the developers that work for a specific company. So if I was going to come over here to MongoDB, I'd want to find the developers that work for MongoDB on Twitter, find their GitHub pages, follow them on any social media that I can, because developers will often brag about the different software that they're using and they're implementing into different projects. And then lastly, they're going to be pushing their new code to GitHub. And if you are following them on GitHub, you can go and check out the code that they have published before anyone else. and see if you can find any vulnerabilities within there, or maybe they have pushed some sensitive information to GitHub that they otherwise shouldn't have. And so following the developers is going to be really helpful. And one last thing the developers will often do is when they launch a new subdomain or a new area of the web application that wasn't previously launched, they'll often post about it and they'll tell you what is going on that specific page. And following the developers is one of my last tips in trying to choose a program. If there are a lot of developers that you have the opportunity to follow on a specific program, this is going to help you be one of the first ones to find new pages as well as code that is being pushed to GitHub. Thanks for watching. I'm going to be installing a few tools here, and it won't take very long. But the first thing I want you to install is gedit, and I already have installed it just like this. So if I hit enter, it will pop open this little text pad for me here, and I can write information and create files. I like to use it instead of Nano or V or Vim because it's just a lot easier to move around. I can actually use my mouse to click around inside of the text file. So the way to install this is type in sudo apt install, just like this, gedit. You'll hit enter your password, and it will install for you. And then the second thing I want you to install is Sublister. So if we type in Sublister like this, not like that, like this, you can see that it doesn't do anything for me. But if I type in sudo apt install and I hit enter, type in your password, it will go ahead and install Sublister for me. And now if I type in Sublister like this, it will turn blue and now be ready for me to use. And we will install Fuff. I don't think Fuff, it is already on the Kali box, so we don't need to install any other tools. Those are the only two we need to install, and we'll go ahead and start looking at how to use the most common tools for the world of bug bounty hunting. One of the most popular tools for finding subdomains, and the way you use it is just type in Sublister, just like this, and then you will type in the domain you want to pull down subdomains for. So we'll type in www. We need actually a -d in here, so we type in -d, and I think we can actually just type in yahoo.com and hit enter, and it will automatically go out and start searching for subdomains for us. One of the important things to know is that when it pulls down subdomains for us, not all of them are going to be in scope, and you should definitely check to make sure they're in scope, and some of them may not even be owned by your target. So in this case, we're looking at Yahoo, and some of these might not even be owned by Yahoo. So one of the things I like to do is, if I was to open up this URL right here, and at the bottom, I like to look to make sure that it says it is owned by Yahoo. And so this is Sublister. This is a great way to pull down subdomains. There are other tools and other ways to use this, but this is one of the most common. And from here, we can actually brute force other endpoints with Fuff, and we'll go ahead and check that out. So with Fuff, this is one of my favorites is because when it brute forces, it goes so quickly. I actually like to slow it down, or if I do run Fuff, I always use a VPN just in case my IP gets banned. I can just change my VPN to another IP address and continue on. But I usually do slow down Fuff so that way the server doesn't think I'm trying to DOS it. So when you use Fuff, it would look something like this. We can type in fuff-help and look at the usage we're shown right here. You have to have a word list, and then there's some other flags in here and the URL. So what we would do is use fuff-w, and then we can go, I think we can type in user, share, word list. What are my options? Derb / small.txt. We'll use this word list, and then we would type in https www.yahoo.com, and then we'd type in fuzz like this. If we hit enter, we need to have our -u right here, and if we hit enter, it'll automatically start brute forcing for us right here where we put fuzz to see if there are any extensions that we can find. A few things to note. We use the -p right here for the delays. And you can also use the filter options right here in order to filter out. Let's say we wanted to filter out by a response code, or we wanted to match a response code, we could get rid of these 302s right here, or anything that has one line or let's say one word, and we can just filter out with FUF that way. So that way the output doesn't go quite so quickly. So we can just come up here and we could say FL. So we're going to filter out. We need a flag -FL, and where we could filter out by the line right here, and we can say anything with one line, don't return it to us. And now you can see it running, and what is brought back has more than one line on it. And there's other ways to filter these out, and you can go ahead and play around with FUF. It is one of my favorites. The other one I like to use is DIRB because it's really simple. You just would type in DIRB, and then you would type in the URL that you want to attack, and then you just hit enter and it'll automatically start testing for you. So those are my two favorites. I like to use DIRB if I just need to do something quick and simple. If I'm looking for speed, I will use FUF. All right, there is something called Google Dorks or Google Dorking, and I'm not really sure why it's called this. So if you know, you can leave a comment and let me know why it's called Google Dorking, because that just seems like a really weird name to me. Maybe I could Google it and find out. But the thing about Google is pretty much everything on the internet is stored inside of Google, the search engine. You just have to know how to look for it. Google is constantly crawling the internet and storing new files, new URLs, and more information into their database. You just have to know how to find it. So let's say I was looking for a doctor named Charles Hodge. What I could type in is just Charles and then type in Hodge. We'll go with Charles Hodge right here. This is what I was going to use. And we hit enter. This was Princeton Theological Seminary's president, but this is not the, let's say, MD that we're looking for. What you can do is just add quotations and put in MD, and now everything that comes back will be medical doctors. Or you can put in literally anything you want into these quotations and it will find it. So an example of this is if we say we want HackerOne, it'll pull up HackerOne. And let's say we want the HackerOne programs. If we type this in, it'll pull it up for us anyway. But what we could do is add in the quotes just like this and say the programs and hit enter, and now everything that comes back will have to have programs inside of the search. And so this is one of the ways to use the Google Dorks. You can also do this with GitHub as well. When you are searching through the GitHub code, you can type in a specific word. Like let's say we're looking for HackerOne, and then we type in quotes, and we want to look for an API. It'll pull down what has an API, and then you can come in here and you can look to see if they have an API that you can use. So using quotes within Google will help you narrow down your search and what is brought back. And as I mentioned, this is something that you should do within GitHub as well when you're searching for, let's say, API keys or passwords or something of that nature. And now we're going to move on to Burp. Okay, in this video, we are going to be setting up our proxy Burp. And right now, if we just hit enter on Google, it loads just fine for us. But when we set up our proxy, this is going to not work, and I'm going to show you how to set it up. So we will come over to these three lines. We'll go down to settings, scroll all the way to the bottom, click settings, go manual proxy configuration. We're going to go 127.0.0.1 because this is the default with port 8080 on Burp. So if we say OK to this and we come over to Google Now and we try and run it, it's going to tell us the proxy server is refusing connection, and we will need to open up Burp. And if this is the first time you've opened Burp, there might be quite a few things you have to click through in order to actually get it to open. But once you get it to open, it will look something like this. So if we come to proxy and options, you will see right here, this is what we have set up, and we're going to need to import these certificates. So you'll click this top one, next, and we are going to go next. We're going to open up file. I guess we're going to select. We're going to have to, in the file that we select, we'll go to our desktop. This is a great place to store it. So we'll name the file cert.ca, and we can save this. It will save to our desktop.
We'll say great. And now that this has saved, we're going to need to add this into our security. I've already added it in, so I'm not going to add it in again, but it'll look just the same. You'll scroll down once you've gone 3 lines to settings. We'll just show this again. Settings, privacy and security. Scroll down, that was too far. Scroll down to certificates. I guess it's all the way at the bottom. You will click view certificates, and then you're going to import, and we're going to go to our desktop. And we're going to say we want all files, and then we're going to save the cert that we just opened. You will click open, and I have already installed it, so we'll say okay, okay. And now when we come back over here to Google, we'll need to turn our proxy interceptor off. We can test it to make sure it works, and it does. I accidentally clicked one of the little tabs down here. So if we say Google, we are now running as we need to, and if we need, we can intercept a request just like that, but we're not going to get into that just yet. So that is how you set up Burp, and we will continue on. Okay, we are going to be starting our URL portion of this course, just what exactly we can learn from the URL, what we can do in the URL, which is actually quite a bit. The URL is actually something that you can learn about how the website functions. You can look, sometimes you can see information, personal information, sensitive data can be stored there. So for example, if in this URL it had an ID of my name or my email address, those are things that you wouldn't necessarily want in a URL, or specifically if a password was in there. Those are things that you could actually report if you had sensitive data in there. But we're basically going to be looking at how we can manipulate the URL to our advantage and what we can do specifically with pages. So I remember when I first started down this path of wanting to learn web app pen testing, sometimes you'll go to a capture the flag website and it will be just a blank page. And I remember coming to the blank pages and thinking, oh my goodness, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do. But for you, we've already gone through the recon portion of this course, and you know to go to Derb and just start looking for directories. And then also we're going to be looking at the source code. I mentioned it briefly earlier, but it's something that can be really helpful, and I'll show you why. So I made this very, very basic HTML website. What I'm about to show you is something that Derb would probably find, but if it doesn't, you can kind of see how this is going to work. You can come in here and you can just go page 1, and then you can go, okay, well, if there's a page 1, is there a page 2? And then you hit enter. Oh, page 2 is blank. And then you go page 3, and then you hit enter, and we hit a forbidden page. And so if we have this forbidden page, there's something on it that we're not supposed to be able to access. Well, how can we get there? And this is when remembering looking at source code can be really helpful. And so we can come over here and we can go view page source. And you can look through and see just how basic this really is. And you can see that we have something hidden, and you can go, there is this directory or this file for more information. And so you can come here and you can copy this and you could paste it in up here. Another way to come across this is you can see that this is hidden. We're going to cover this in more detail as we go through the course. But as you go to the source page, one other thing that's really helpful to look through is to right click and just go inspect. You can inspect what is on the page. It's basically the same thing that we saw was the source, but you can see where this is hidden. Sometimes you will have login pages and there will be hidden fields that you can open up and try and manipulate. And you can just actually type this into text and it'll actually show up on the page as plain text. And so we have this file here. If you remember, we had page 3 was forbidden, and we're not able to enter into it. But we can try. This HTML actually won't be on any websites. I just didn't take the time to remove it. And so we'll ignore it and act like it isn't there. But if we remember from this right here, we have this edit 3, which I'm guessing is our page 3. And then this is the forbidden page where you can access files. Now, we're actually going to go and practice something very similar to this. And when you do this, what you're going to need to do is go to Google. I would encourage making a new Gmail account and then going and signing up on HackerOne. And then we're going to be using Hacker 101 to practice what we just saw for us to be able to gain some practice. It is a CTF. Okay, we are going to set up our HackerOne account. You can actually come into Google and type in Hacker 101. This is going to be their capture the flag practice area, and you can actually click this, and what will happen for you, I've already logged in, but what will happen for you is it's going to say, it'll bring you to a login page. Once you reach the login page, you will have to go and create your own account with HackerOne. And once you create your account with HackerOne, you can navigate back to Google, type in Hacker 101, and then click on the Hacker CTF, and then it will bring you back to login. You will click the blue button, and then you will log in, and it will bring you to this page. And if it doesn't bring you to this page, you'll have a navigation bar very similar to this one, and you will just click on CTF, and then you will be at this page. But you're going to have to register in order to reach this page. And then what I want you to do as we begin working with actual vulnerable websites is go ahead and click go. This is going to be the very first challenge I have for you. Once it loads, you're going to be brought to this page. And the way HackerOne has set up their training program is that you will have flags, and then it'll have a bunch of random numbers. And once you reach that flag, you will know you have found the area of the website that you were not supposed to find or is supposed to be vulnerable. And so with that, I want to have you pause this video and see if what you've learned in the last lesson, you can figure out how to find the flag all on your own. So with that, pause the video and give that challenge a go. Okay, if you got it, that is great. If not, I'm going to go ahead and reveal to you how to find this specific flag. Before you do, I would challenge you to go back and watch the previous video and just see the steps that I walk through, and then go ahead and come back here and give it a try, because I am certain with what we have covered, you can find this flag on your own. So the way we find this very first flag is by coming in here and just right clicking and then going to view page source. And then we can look at the page source and we can see what is in here. And it has a background image, and then here it is, background.png. Just a little bit ago, actually came in here to try this, and my guess was this is going to be a file that we were not supposed to be able to access. And so copied this, came over and pasted at the end of our URL. We're going to paste it and then hit enter, and then here is our flag. We're going to move on into the next video, and I'm going to help you get set up on what you're looking for, and then I'm going to turn you loose and see if you can find the next flag on your own. Okay, we are ready for challenge number 2. We are going to come into the first easy program we can enter. We're going to only find one of these 4 flags. We'll actually come back later. We're going to go ahead and click go and pull open this vulnerable website, and I'm going to turn you loose once this loads, because everything that we have done so far, that we have covered, should give you everything you need to know to find the flag that we're looking for in this specific capture the flag. And so with that, I want you to go ahead and click around in the website and see if you can find the flag. And so we can go ahead and pause the video now and see if you can solve the first challenge. I believe we've covered most everything you need to know to find this flag. And so the first thing that we would do is just start clicking around, and you could maybe make a page and see what happens. We've got a page here. We're on page 9. And so we can go back, we can edit this page, and we can see we can edit our page 9. We can go back, we can click on the markdown test and click the button. It doesn't really do anything. Can come in and view the page source. And we can look around. There's not really a whole lot here for us. And so we can go back and we can go to home, we can go to testing, and just as we continue to click around, a couple of things that stand out to me in our URL is that we have this page. So we can come into, let's just go into the page that we created. We can come in here and just go page 1, page 2, page 3, not found. Well, we know there has to be at least 9 because we have created page 9. So we'll go to 4, 5, and then we hit the forbidden page. If you remember in the example that I showed earlier, we have seen a forbidden page before, and then we'll keep going. We'll go all the way up to page 9 and look at every single one, every single option we have, because we know that's how far we are as we've created. So we have all of these, and then page 9 should be the one we created. So what page was that was forbidden? It was page 5. So how do we access this? We can go view page source. It says we don't have permission, and it is forbidden. Well, there is another way to view this page. If you remember from the example website that I made and showed earlier, you would know that we can try and get around this because we have the option to edit this page. And so if we edit this page and we know we can edit the page that we made, maybe we can edit the page that was forbidden. So we can come in here and put in 5, and there it is. There's the flag. So I hope you found this. I think by now we've covered everything needed to find a flag like this in the URL. I have a few more challenges for us to go ahead and try. They're going to be on a website called Over the Wire, and I will actually help you navigate to that page and get logged in. We don't actually have to make a user or create a user, which is very nice, and so it's very easy to access and to practice on. And so with that, I'll see you in the next video and we'll get that all set up. Okay, we are ready for a few more challenges. And so we're going to go ahead and head over to a website called Over the Wire, and you can click on it or type it in. And we're going to go ahead and click on Nodus. This is where we're going to be working out of. We can click on that and it will pull it open. And this is where we're going to get started. I'm going to go ahead and open a new tab to keep this one open. So we're going to start on level 0. Password is going to be level 0. And so all we have to do is copy this URL and paste it in, and then hit enter. And our password is going to be Nodus 0 and Nodus 0. And then we'll hit enter. And every time you find a new flag, you will come up here and you will change the 0 to a 1, the 1 to a 2, the 2 to a 3, and it will prompt you and say username. And so we have Nodus 0 right now. The next username will be Nodus 1, and then the flag that you find will actually be your password for the next level. We have gone over everything needed to find this first flag, and I want you to go ahead and try and do that now. Okay, hopefully that went well for you and you were able to find the first flag. But before we get into that and get going too far, there's one thing I forgot to mention in the recon portion of the course, something that we will use in Nodus and you will use later on in your bug bounty hunting career, is the robots.txt file. So you can have, the way we get to that is you just hit a / and then you hit robot.txt and then you hit enter, and it will take you to a page. This one doesn't have one set up, but it'll take you to a page that doesn't allow search engines to find. And so sometimes websites will have files that they are hosting online that they don't want Google displaying, and so they'll have a disallow or allow for Google and Bing and Yahoo and other search engines to go through and crawl their website, and it will go through that robots.txt file and will say, do not allow Google or Bing or Yahoo to crawl through these files. And so it's always a good thing to check the robots.txt and roll through and see what's allowed and what's disallowed, and then visit those disallowed files and see what's in there, or those domains or directories that we find. And so with that, we'll go ahead and solve this challenge. And so I hope by now you know one of the first things we do is to go ahead and view the page source, or you can inspect the element. Either one works. I like to view the page source because it gives us a more complete view. And so one thing I want to mention about the Nodus levels is everything inside this head tag, which will be from here to here, doesn't have anything to do with the level. And so sometimes you'll see the password for the previous level up here, which the next one would be right here. This is our password for this challenge. And so I hope you found this, and next time if you view the page source, this password will be right here. And just so you know, it's inside the head tag, and so it's not actually anything that's going to be relevant to us. And so here's the password for the next level. So you can go ahead and copy this, and the way we get to the next level, if you remember, is come up here, go to Nodus, change this to 1. It will prompt us for the username, which is going to be Nodus1. And then our password, which we just found in that flag, and we hit enter, and that takes us to the next level. And if you want to go ahead and try and solve this challenge, you can do that now. I'm going to stop this video and we will solve this challenge in the next lesson. And so this one says that we are not allowed to right click. It's been blocked. However, for me, if I go ahead and I use my keyboard to right click, if I hold down Control and hit the right click or click, then it works for me. And so my right click is available through using Control, and then I do the exact same thing. I go to View Page Source. And then once in here, you can look through our code, and then they've got it commented out. The password for Nodus 2 is, and then here's our password. Now this may seem really easy, but you will actually find people who have put in these comments in the code of a username or a password or an API key, and they just have forgotten to delete it. So they'll put them in here while they're developing the site or while they're writing their code, and they need to remember their username, their passwords, other sensitive information, and you will actually come across it just being hard-coded right onto the site. And so that's why we check the code, and sometimes you will find you will really find something just like this, a username and a password. These seem very easy, but they're also very practical, and they're something you will come across pretty regularly. All right, this is an update. Since I originally made this video and was saying that developers will accidentally push usernames and passwords, I was working on the back end of a web app, and I accidentally pushed my database username and password to the public GitHub page. So when I say this happens, I mean it. I have done it. I'm sure almost every single developer at some point has pushed something sensitive to GitHub, and it is something to watch out for. So there is my update. And so I guess I shouldn't say pretty regularly. You will come across them. Most people will have already reported these. This is why it's important to be one of the first ones on a site to pick a specific target and make sure you keep up to date with what's coming out new on different domains and different subdomains as you continue to work through different programs and your bug bounty hunting. So we'll go ahead and copy this password. We'll come back to our main site. We'll type in Nodus2. And we will type in Nodus2 and paste our password. I'm going to not save this. And then here we are again. It says there's nothing on this page. That should give us a clue. Everything we need to know to solve this challenge, we have already covered previously. I think there's a little more to it that will cause us to need our critical thinking skills, but we have covered everything needed to solve this challenge. And so I'm going to go ahead and give this a go, and we'll go over the solution. Okay, how did that go? Hopefully you were able to solve this challenge. I'm actually going to show us a couple different ways that we could solve this challenge, just so that we have a more rounded understanding of how the URL works and how different files and different directories are included into domains. And so with that, I think by now you probably know what we're going to do. We're going to go ahead and right click. We're going to view the page source, and we see here's where it says there is nothing on this page. And so we can look through everything in the header, doesn't matter, isn't relevant to us. And so all that's left is this image. And then we have a link. And so what we can do is we can go ahead and copy this, and we're going to paste it into our URL. And so as we paste this, we can go ahead and hit enter and see where it takes us. And when I first solved this, I went and I checked to see if I could inspect the element to see if there was anything else on this page other than this picture, or maybe there was something inside of it that would help us. And when I was looking here at the URL, I noticed that this is a file or an image, and it's inside of a directory called files. Now, if you remember, we can actually go back directories, and you can actually just delete the pixel.png, and it will take you to the previous directory, and here it is. Or we can go back, and just another way to see this is you can do just like we learned in our home folder or in our Kali Linux terminal. You can have your slash, and you can go .. slash, and you can hit enter, and that will take us back one file or one directory. And so we've already viewed the pixel, and now we've been in the parent directory, but now we can see this users.txt. And so we can click this, and it'll take us into a new file. And here's usernames and passwords. And so you have Alice, Bob, Charlie, and then here's Nodus3. So this would be our username, and here is our password for the next challenge. And so we've seen all of this before. We have seen that we can find in our source code things that don't show up, or hidden files or hidden images. And so we've seen this before. So I hope that you would have copied this and have pasted it. And we've also seen what's called the directory traversal, going back or deleting and moving into different files and different directories. And so I hope that you were able to solve this challenge. And so we'll go ahead and get set up for the next challenge. Different ways to install OWASP Juice Shop, and you can watch the next 5 minutes of the video and see which one you think looks easier. I personally think the Try Hack Me OWASP Juice Shop right here is the easiest way, but I'll show you how to download and install OWASP Juice Shop onto your local machine, and you can decide which way looks easiest for you and you would like to run. So I'm going to show both of those to you now. Since I originally have made these videos, OWASP Juice Shop has now been put on Try Hack Me, and it's really simple to just go to Try Hack Me, make an account with them, and connect with their servers, and then open up a Juice Shop box. So you can either install it the way that I have already shown in the previous video, or you can come to Try Hack Me. It is free to make an account and open up OWASP Juice Shop, and from there everything will be the same. You will just click Start Machine, and it will open up a machine like this, and then once this gives you an IP address, you can copy it to your clipboard and open up a new tab and paste in the IP address, and it will open up Juice Shop for you. you. Now I'll let this load and I'm going to cut this and then I'll show you how to open it up and everything will look just the same. The way you're going to connect to the box is come up to access machine. You're going to click open VPN, download right here, and it will download your VPN for you. You'll come over here, you will CD into your downloads, and then you will type in sudo openvpn and then whatever your VPN download name is, and you'll hit enter in your password, and it will connect you. I'll go ahead and do this now. Okay, I have connected to the VPN, and now we can copy this and with our new tab paste this in, and we will be brought to the JuiceShop web app, and we will accept the cookies, num num, and then we are ready to start. So it's up to you which way you would like to install JuiceShop. Okay, we are going to go ahead and install a vulnerable web app on our local machine. It's a great place to practice. It's put out by OWASP, which is going to be a great resource for you. Rather than just seeing me show you how to do something or listen to me tell you about it, this is going to be a place that we actually go out and practice. And so we're going to download it by going to sourceforge.net, and I'm going to have this linked for you in the resources, and you can go ahead and click on that link, and hopefully I can get it to link directly to the download so that you don't have to navigate through any of this. And this is actually my second time trying to download it, because the first time I downloaded the wrong version, and I don't want that to happen to you. And so hopefully that link will work for you, but if not, you can follow along and I'll show you how to get to the proper download. So we type in Juice and we click on JuiceShop. It was the second one in the search engine. We'll go ahead and click Files. We want 9.1.3, which is right here. We're going to be installing Node 12, and so we need to make sure that we get Node 12, and it's on Linux, which is way down here at the bottom. This is where I went wrong the last time. So we have JuiceShop Node 12 with Linux. This isn't the right file. That's not the file we want. This one right here is the one we want. We want the TGZ. And so we'll go ahead and click that. And after you click this, it might take a little bit for the download to go ahead and take place, but you can go ahead and click it. Your download will begin shortly. And then once it downloads, we'll go ahead and save it, and it will automatically save to our downloads. And so I'm going to go ahead and pause the video and I'll resume it once the download has popped up. Okay, there's our download. We're going to go ahead and click Save File, and this is going to save it to our downloads. We can go ahead and click OK. I'm going to go ahead and close out of SourceForge because we no longer need that. And then we're going to navigate over to our terminal. I am in the home directory, so I'm going to go ahead and CD into our downloads. I will ls, and then here's the file we just downloaded. We need to unzip it, so we're going to go ahead and type in tar, and then we will go -xvzf, and then JuiceShop. Yours isn't going to pop up like mine is because I already typed this in once. And then I'll tab to autocomplete, and this will go ahead and extract all of the content for us. And then once this is finished, you will need to install Node.js and then npm. So we'll go ahead and type in sudo apt get install, and first you'll go Node.js. I already installed it, so I'm not going to install it again, but you'd hit enter and it'll say, are you sure you want to? You will put in Y, and then you will hit enter, and it will go ahead and finish the download for you. It might take up to a minute because there's a lot of files, especially in npm. And so we'll go ahead and second you'll do sudo apt get install npm. You'll hit enter. You will enter your password for the first one. You won't have to enter it for the second one. And that will go ahead and run and install npm. And then we're going to ls in our downloads, and we're going to change directories into JuiceShop. And so we'll cd into our JuiceShop folder. And every time you run OWASP JuiceShop and you want to open it up and you want to practice in this vulnerable web app, you will have to cd into your downloads and cd into JuiceShop, because when you spin up your server, it is going to spin up whatever content is inside the directory that you're inside of. And so now to start npm, we just type npm start, and that will go ahead and spin up our server for us. And it now says our server is listening on port 3000. And then we can come back to our search engine and you can type, this is what we'll be typing in, just localhost 3000. And you'll type that into your browser. And this is now our vulnerable web app that we're going to be practicing on in the future lessons. But before we get to practicing and seeing what we can manipulate and what vulnerabilities we can find, I want to walk us through a little bit of what we're going to be looking for and how to identify different vulnerabilities and how we're going to use burp to help us find them. But you will notice that if you have burp running and you turn your proxy on and you start clicking on things and you refresh the page, burp is not intercepting anything. It is not working for us. So we need to configure our traffic so that it goes through our proxy. And we're going to do that by going over here, opening a new tab. We will type in about config and hit enter. And I will warn you to proceed with caution because this will change how your browser functions. So you want to accept the risk and continue. And we are going to type in network dot proxy. And this one right here, allow hijacking localhost. We'll click this and we need it to change to true. And then we can go ahead and close out of this tab. And now if we refresh our page, you can see that our traffic is running through burp and we are able to intercept the requests. Okay, in the next few videos, we're going to be going through a couple different PowerPoints. The reason for this is I think it's really helpful for us to have some kind of foundation before we begin looking at examples. I think by the time we get through the PowerPoints, you're going to be a little confused and probably still not know what exactly we're looking for or what's going on. But my hope is that with the PowerPoints and then just a couple of examples, you'll be able to start finding some of these bugs on your own. And we're going to be practicing on Hacker 101 as well as Juice Shop, which we just downloaded. And we're going to be looking at how to use burp before we begin looking at trying to exploit some of these vulnerabilities. I think that you will be using burp a lot, and so it'll be helpful to go through and kind of look at how it works and explore just a couple of its functionalities before we begin our exploitation of some of these vulnerabilities. And so we're going to be looking at IDORs, business logic errors, and we are also going to be looking at manipulating user input and cookies and tokens as well as we continue in this course. And so we're going to begin by looking at insecure direct object reference. These are called IDORs. That really doesn't tell us a whole lot, but they're really simple to understand once we get going. These IDORs are going to be just parameters that we can change, so that we can bypass specific functions on a web app. With IDORs or business logic errors, you can bypass payment options, you can reverse payment options so that you're the one getting paid, you can put things into other people's carts. There's a lot of different ways you can use IDORs, and when you're out hunting on your own, you're going to have to be creative because there are many different ways that you can exploit IDORs. You can skip login pages, you can access someone else's account. I personally, one of the first bugs I ever found was being able to write on someone else's social media platforms. It was actually just one platform, and there was just one specific area of the web app where I was able to change an ID and write on someone else's wall of their news feed. And so that is an example of an IDOR. You can also leave feedback on someone else's, under someone else's name. You can edit another person's blog or their post. And so these are just examples of IDORs and different ways that you are going to be able to find them. And IDORs and business logic errors are going to be the most common bugs out there, which is a great thing because it makes it easier for us to find them, and they are easy to find as well. And so these are something I think we should learn very well, and we are going to have a significant amount of time to practice these because there's actually a lot of different areas and ways to practice these, especially in JuiceShop, which we just downloaded. The best way to test for these, and I think the only way, is by creating 2 different accounts. It is always good to create 2 different accounts because you will have to test in real life against your own accounts. You cannot test on someone else's account. So you can't write actually on someone else's wall. This would be out of scope, or you can't leave feedback as a different user. These will always be out of scope. You don't want to ever mess with the functionality of the application or the people who use it. You will only use your own accounts to test against, and it also makes it easier to use your own account because you already have a second ID number that you can use on your attacker account. So you'll have an attacker account and a victim account that you will use, and so you don't want to test on someone else's account. An example, or a simple example to remember, is to look for hidden inputs. You'll actually see this as well in Burp. When you create an account, it won't say input type hidden, but you will see such as a name and your username, and it will say, are you an admin? And then it'll say value no. An easy way to show one of these errors is just to change this value to yes or true, and you will automatically have admin privileges. And we're actually going to be able to test this out in JuiceShop, something just like this. So you'll get to see this in action. And so we're always looking for parameters and things that we can change to get us somewhere that we should not be. One of the other places that you will find iDoors is in cookies. A lot of times cookies and tokens will host user information. So that's how websites will keep you authenticated. Not all of them, but some of them will be through cookies. And so you will have inside cookies, maybe you'll see something in your cookie like user ID and then a number. And you can change the number to something else to see if you can access that account. For example, if you had 2 accounts, you'd take the user ID of your victim account and you would replace it on your attacker account and see if you can access parts of that application that you shouldn't under another user. If you were getting malicious with this, you would change the value to 0 or 1 and see if you could gain admin privileges to the web app. And another way to test for this is to see if you can log in, save your cookies first or your tokens, and then log out, and then see if you can log in and delete your previous cookies or tokens and then repaste in your new ones and see if they have been terminated or ended. If they haven't, this would be a logic error, because when the session has ended, so should the cookies or tokens. And so you can see what to manipulate and where you can manipulate different things within cookies and tokens as well. These aren't specifically iDoors, but they're similar. They're similar enough that I think they can be included together. And so when we're testing, we're going to be using Burp. This is going to be where we're at the most. Sometimes you will be able to see these in a URL. For example, if we have this example here, www.website.com, and let's say you have an invoice, you just purchased something, and it says your invoice number is 12. In a URL, you can just change this 12 to an 11 and see if you can access another customer's invoice. And if you could, this would be a sensitive information disclosure. It's something you shouldn't be able to access. And that would be a simple iDoor. I think they're easier to test for in Burp because it's all laid out for us, as we'll see in the coming videos. And so also another example would be you can upload images or resumes, like on Indeed. You can upload a resume, and you can see in the URL if you pull your resume. So let's pretend this is Indeed and it says www.indeed.com, and then it's got a slash and it says resume equals 87, and that's your resume. You could change this and see if you could access someone else's image or resume just like you would have with the invoice and see what you can access. But remember, out in the wild, we are testing our own accounts. And so I actually have an example here for us. I pulled off of HackerOne of an IDOR that somebody actually has found. And so we'll walk through exactly how he pulled this off. And so he goes to the website, remember, creating 2 accounts. He has a victim, logs in as the victim. He creates a blog on the site. He saves it. And then what he ends up doing is going into the victim account or the attacker account, and he does the same thing, makes the blog. And then from there, he clicks the save button and then goes to the edit user profile and saves it, opens up Burp. And then what happens is he can change the ID with the victim's ID. And this would be a clear IDOR accessing something that you shouldn't be able to. And we've seen things similar to this with the URLs earlier in changing URLs. And then he forwards the request to go to the victim's account and the website information. And you can see that it has changed. And so this is an example of an IDOR. I think we'll be able to make this sound a whole lot easier once we're actually walking through them. And so I want to go and talk a little bit more about cookies and the URL and what exactly we can do with them. Then we're going to look at how to use Burp to find IDORs, and then I want to turn you loose and let you try and find an IDOR on your own. In this video, we're going to talk a little more about URLs and what we can do with them, cookies and tokens, and then we're going to look at something called CyberChef, and then we'll move into Burp and exactly how it is going to help us in its functionality. But before we get there, I was talking with my wife and I just said, hey, I think I'm going to have to warn that my PowerPoints are going to be full of errors because I actually made them just for bullet points for myself, and I was going to keep them on my second monitor. And then I realized I didn't have anything to show you and I wasn't just going to have a blank screen. So if you're wondering how can somebody with a PhD have such poor quality PowerPoints, they were originally just my notes. And so I decided rather than sit here and comb through them and go back over it, I will just show you. This is basically what my notes look like when I take notes, and walk you through them just so we can have a better understanding of a few more exploits before we move into Burp. So first, changing passwords. You will actually come across this in JuiceShop when we are practicing, and more as we get further into the course. Sometimes you will see a URL that looks similar to this, or in Burp, it will pop up at the bottom of a post request, and we will have something similar to this, like a change password. You will have the username, and then the new password will be stored right here. And in something like this, you could actually grab someone else's username and on your victim account, try and change the password to it and see if you're able to pull that off. Or you can go ahead and see if you can maybe delete your victim account by, instead of having change password, you'd have delete account or delete user or just delete. And then you can put the username here and you would obviously not have the password. You will also in Burp be able to have delete instead of, you'll have put, post, delete options, and you can try and delete the account through Burp. And if you are unable to, even if you aren't able to pull any of that off, if you have a URL that has a username and a password in it, even if it is encoded with something as simple as base64, this would be an information disclosure. And we'll get to why this would be an information disclosure in just a few slides. We talked about this a little bit in the last PowerPoint, in the last video. If you have a website, something similar to this, which I actually just copied this out of the OWASP guide and the OWASP pen testing guide, as well as another image that we're going to come to here in a second. Sometimes you'll come to something like this. If you are logged out, and you copy and paste in a URL that requires you to be authenticated, and it says authenticated no, and it does not allow you to view the site, you can just change this authentication here to yes or true and see if you are able to access the site and see what you can gain access to. And then we can check the logout functionality. And this is why it is an information disclosure if you have a username and a password in the URL, because it is possible for you to log out on your computer and then close the browser, and you'll be able to open up the browser and it has cached the previous page that you were in, and you can go back into the history and open that page. And if it opens, even if you're not able to go to any other links because you're not authenticated anymore, but if it opens that URL and your username and password is in there, it would be an information disclosure. Or if you log out and you don't close the browser, it's possible to hit the back arrow or the back button and go to the previous page and have the information there. And this can also be more than just information disclosure if you're able to hit the back button after you've logged out and then browse the site again and it re-authenticate you. This is something that's listed in the OWASP guide. It's something that happens. It's not very common, but it's something to check for. And you might be thinking this isn't a very big deal, because that's what I originally thought I was. Okay, we are going to, in this video, go through some of the functionality of Burp. And so I'm going to go ahead and have you navigate over to Hacker 101 and get into their CTF. And we're going to open up Postbook. And you can go ahead and click go and pull it open. And when you're there, the first page you'll come to will look like this. And so we'll go ahead and come over on Burp. You can turn your intercept on and make sure that you are sending all of your traffic through your proxy by coming over here. We'll go to Preferences, scroll down to Settings, and make sure that you have manual proxy configuration, and then it looks like this. And once you have that done, you can click OK, and your proxy should now be set up to intercept your traffic. And just to give it a test, you can refresh the page and make sure that it pulls through here, and you can forward all of the requests we intercept, or you can just turn it back off and then turn it back on. But we are going to come in here and we are going to sign up. And so we'll go ahead and click sign up, and you can just see what's going on in here. We have our signup.php. You can see it's pulling that from our URL. We have a GET request. We'll forward that, and we'll come back over here. And this is where you're going to make your username. And we can just type in test, and password can be test. And you can submit your query. And then in here you can see your username and your password. And if you wanted to actually try and mess with this and see what we can do with it, we would send it to Repeater. So you just right click and click send to Repeater. And over here, we can send this request as many times as we would like to. And so in here, we can change the username and click test1 and then send it. And we are getting a 302 in response. So let's go ahead and shut this off and see we have successfully signed up. And I think we actually created the test1 account as well. Yep, so we have made the test account and the test1 account. And while you're in Repeater over here, you can see that this would be not a very secure way of submitting these things. You will actually come across this pretty regularly, even on large, very common websites. And you can see what you can do here. You can try and manipulate things and see just what you can do, and maybe type a GET request and change to a different URL and see what response you get over here. There's lots of things you can do. And in Repeater, you can send this as many times as you want to the server, and really just try and figure out if you can get anywhere that you shouldn't be with this. And so we're going to go ahead and come back to our proxy, turn it on. Now we are going to just create a post. We'll go hello world, create post. We have a user ID of 5, and remember, every time we see ID, we should be thinking IDOR. What can we change? Where can we go? What can we get with this? And we have the body of the message over here. We have a cookie over here. You could bring this over to CyberChef and see if maybe there's anything in there. If you remember, we just go magic, and then we would paste it in, and you could see we didn't get anything out of our cookie. And so that's okay. We would come back here. We can send this to, it says we get a redirect. You can follow the redirect and then come down here and see what your response is. And it says we need to sign in. So you have to be authenticated. So the cookie is necessary, something that we have to have in order to continue on for authentication purposes. But as you can see, this is kind of how I would just go about testing at the beginning. Just see what I can do with this ID, what I can do with burp with body, see where I can get, where I can go, see what responses come back. And with that, I think I've given you a pretty good clue here with this user ID. There is an IDOR in Postbook. I'm going to give you the challenge now to open up Burp, come in, make an account or 2 accounts, and see if you can find the IDOR. Before we go ahead and solve this challenge, I want to introduce you into one more functionality inside Burp that is going to be helpful in the future as you're doing bug bounty hunting, and that is the intruder. We're still right here in intruder. One of the things we could do with intruder is as we come in here and we just refresh this page, we have this ID of 6. Let's say there are 1,000 different numbers in here. What you can do is send this to intruder and it will actually go through these numbers for us. So you can come over here and you can go to position and we will clear this and you'll highlight this number 6, and what it does is it will go through every number we specify in here and replace that number 6 and then give us back the response. So we can come over to our payload and we can go simple, we can do a simple list, and then we will put in just numbers. We'll do 1 through 10, so you just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And now we have just a simple list and we have just the one position, and we're going to go ahead and run through these numbers. And so what you do is you click start attack and go okay, and it will automatically replace that for us. And then we can click on these and see what we have in the response. And you can come through and see if we have found anything in here. It says write a new post, my profile. It doesn't look like anything private. This is for my own eyes only. Number 2, and we see the same thing. And this one actually has someone put in actual content, and then you can go down to number 3 and you can see how this would make it easier. So you don't actually have to go through and do 1, 2, 3, 4 manually. You can, but you don't have to. And so what we would do if we wanted to get more malicious with this, as we're looking for an IDOR, we can come back into our proxy here and you can turn it off, or you can use Burp. I'm going to use the URL just because it's what we're used to, but I would encourage you to actually try this with Burp. I'm going to show you how I would do it with the URL, and then you can actually come in here and see if you can run this exploit and find the flag with Burp and without using the URL. And so what we do is the exact same thing. You can come in here and you can just go 1, and then somebody posted this. It's not private, it's to the public, and you can come here and you can type in 2, and this actually has the checkbox. Yes, this is my own eyes only, and so this would be something that is not supposed to be seen by everyone, and so this would be considered an IDOR. If this was an actual program, you could report this as an IDOR, and not only that, you can write inside someone else's entry here, and then you can save the post. And in saving the post, I am not actually sure why there are 2 flags, maybe one for writing on someone else's wall and one for the IDOR. I'm actually not entirely sure, but you can see the author was also an admin. So we made it beyond just a regular user and into an admin. And so this is how IDORs work. We're going to be moving from Postbook into Juice Shop. And the way I want to work through the Juice Shop vulnerabilities is by giving you just little hints, maybe telling you what part of the application there is a vulnerability, and then setting you free. And after you have spent a significant amount of time and you're starting to get frustrated or you want a clue, just continue watching the video, and I'm going to work through some of these vulnerabilities step by step. But I want you to give it a shot and try and figure out where the vulnerability is and see if you can solve the challenges on your own. And only if you're really struggling, come back and get another clue and then pause the video again and see if you can figure out the rest of the challenge on your own, kind of like we have been doing. But from this point on, it's going to be a lot more difficult for me to show you very specific vulnerabilities on multiple websites, because at this point, Juice Shop is going to be our main place of working, because there's not a whole lot of options when it comes to practicing specific vulnerabilities and then me showing them to you. So I want to give you clues of where they might be located in the application and then set you free to try and exploit them, and then only when necessary help you with another clue. And so with that, you can actually continue playing around in Postbook and see just what else you can do in finding iDoors. Okay, we are ready to find our first iDoor on our vulnerable web application. So you can come in here and try and find it on your own, or I can give you a tip on how to get started. If you want to try it completely on your own, you can go ahead and pause the video now, browse the application, intercept your traffic with Burp, and see if you can find the iDoor. Your first tip is going to be, we'll find the iDoor in leaving customer feedback under someone else's user. So you can go ahead and try and find that now if you want, or keep playing the video for the next tip. Okay, the next tip is going to be creating an account. I already created one. I figured you didn't want to sit through me creating an account, so you can actually just come up here, click on the account setting, the account tab, go to login, create a login. And once you're logged in, try and find how you can leave feedback as someone else. We are going to go ahead and solve this challenge. If at any time you feel like we have gone far enough and you have enough clues, you can pause the video and try and solve it on your own from that point forward. But we're going to come over here to this menu. We are going to click Customer Feedback. Now, I want to give you another helpful tip. If math is not your strong suit, you can actually open up and inspect the element. You can come to network, and then you can refresh this. And in our network, we will get a whole bunch of GET requests, and we will look through and find the one. Since this is called CAPTCHA, we're going to find the one that is labeled with CAPTCHA, and in there it will have for us the answer. And you see this request. We are going to look at the scoreboard at the end of this video, and I'll kind of talk through what this is, but we're going to go to this as soon as we solve this iDoor. But as we continue scrolling through and we're looking for the CAPTCHA right here, you can go to the response. Our answer is going to be 11. So it will solve for you whatever math problem you have. And that's the easiest way to get through these. And so our answer is going to be 11. It has our user name. We can leave a comment. I like to just leave hello world. We will give it a rating, and then make sure to intercept when you submit this. And so we'll hit submit, and now we have our user ID. If you want, you can go ahead and pause the video and see if you can figure out what to do from here. What we will do is we're going to send this to the repeater. We can come up here, open it up. We can send this request to make sure it goes through. It says it was created, so we have successfully left feedback. But we want to leave feedback as someone else. And so what we do is we can change our ID to, let's just go 14. Just pick an arbitrary number that's less than the one we were using or the one we were assigned. and then we can send it, and it says it was created. So now we should be able to turn off our proxy intercept, come back to our web application, and it tells us we successfully solved the challenge of forging feedback. So this is an example of an IDOR where we are leaving feedback under some other user's name. And now I want to go to the scoreboard real quick. This is where you can see the challenges, and you can see all of the challenges that are available on this web application. All right, I was playing around with the comment section in the products, and I realized you can actually leave feedback as someone else other than coming over here to our customer feedback. You can actually leave feedback from a different user right here on these products, and maybe you actually figured that out in the last one, and if you did, that's awesome. And if not, you can go ahead and try and solve this challenge on your own, and then we will go through it together. So if you want to give that a shot, you can go ahead and do that now. Okay, we are going to just open up one of the items that already has a review so that we have a name that we can leave feedback under. And what we'll do is come over and turn on our intercept and type in some kind of message, and then we will submit. We'll come over here and see if we can find it, and here it is. We can send this to our repeater. You can come over here and send this, and it says it was created. So we have the message, and then we have the author. So instead of having our name in here, we can put in Bender at Juice Shop. Was it dash? I think that is how it was written. And then we should be able to send this, and we'll actually just put in something else here and send it, and it says it was created. We'll turn the intercept off, and you can see here it was created under someone else's name, and it actually says we have successfully completed the challenge again. Okay, our next challenge is going to be one that we have talked about, but we have not actually seen, and I have not come across any vulnerable web apps to actually test this on and show it to you, but we have talked about it, and you might have to use some of your Googling skills, or just if you get stuck, follow along with the video and get a hint before you move on. But we're going to create an admin account, and this is something that is very possible that you will come across. It's not very common, but it does happen that you can find ways to create an admin account or escalate your privileges. So we're going to go ahead and make sure our intercept is off. And what I need you to do is go ahead and create an account and see if you can figure out how to get the account enrolled as an admin. And so you can go ahead and try that now. I think what I will have to do is log out, and I'm going to make a new account just the same. And I will come in here and go not yet a customer. This time we'll go John at John